Good evening and welcome to the Tuesday, June 20th, 2023 business meeting of the Olympia City Council. For the record, we have a quorum this evening. All of us are present. There are no announcements this evening, so we're going to head straight to approval of tonight's agenda. I need a motion.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We have an agenda, takes us right to special recognition. We have two this evening. We're going to start with recognizing National Parks and Recreation Month for the month of July. So we're ahead of ourselves here a little bit. And at this time, I'd like to invite forward Scott River, who is our Director of Recreation and Facilities, to talk about this proclamation. And actually, I'm a little out of my order. I'm so sorry. Yeah, I'm going to have Councilmember Cooper read the proclamation first, and then we'll have some context for what you're going to talk about. All right, thanks.
See, in here, I thought Scott was going to get me out of it. Whereas Parks and Recreation is an integral part of communities throughout the country, including the city of Olympia. And whereas Parks and Recreation promotes health and wellness, improving the physical and mental health of people who live near parks, and whereas Parks and Recreation promotes time spent in nature, which positively impacts mental health by increasing cognitive performance and well-being and alleviating illnesses such as depression, attention deficit disorders, and Alzheimer's disease. And whereas Parks and Recreation encourages physical activities by providing space for popular sports, hiking trails, fitness programs, and many other activities designed to promote active lifestyles. And whereas Parks and Recreation programming and educational activities such as out-of-school time programming, youth sports, and environmental education are critical to childhood development. And whereas Parks and Recreation is fundamental to the environmental well-being of our community. And whereas Parks and Recreation is essential and adaptable infrastructure that makes our communities resilient in the face of natural disasters and climate change. And whereas our parks and natural recreation areas ensure the ecological beauty of our community and provide a place for children and adults to connect with nature and recreate outdoors. And whereas the U.S. House of Representatives has designated July as Parks and Recreation Month, and now therefore be it resolved that the Olympia City Council does hereby proclaim July as Parks and Recreation Month in the city of Olympia and encourage the community to experience the benefits derived from the broad range of Olympia's parks and recreation resources. Signed in the city of Olympia, Washington, this 20th day of June, 2023, Olympia City Council, Cheryl Selby, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Cooper. And now I'd like to invite forward Scott River, Director of Recreation Facilities in the Parks, Arts, and Recreation Department.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the City Council. I just want to open with a grateful thank you for your continued support of all things parks, arts, and recreation. We're very fortunate as staff to work in a community that places such a high value on all of the services that we provide. We have a few highlights from the past year or that are happening right now that I think really speaks to the values of our community and lifts up some great accomplishments. And so with that, I'm going to launch right in. First, we are now in our second full year of Department Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging Committee. Led by Olivia Salazar-DeBro, it provides a really important vehicle for employees to not only bring forward issues they observe and work on solutions, but also creates momentum for the implementation of EIB-related policies and practices department-wide. For me, culture change really works from the inside out, and I think this committee has been a key in making that happen. In addition to our team's work on equity, inclusion, and belonging, Olivia has been instrumental in leading our offerings of 8 unique cultural celebrations, either directly or through partnerships. These include, among 5 others, May's Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Celebration, this past weekend's Juneteenth Celebration Festival, and later this year, Hispanic Heritage Month. So I intentionally shared our Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging Committee work first because our remaining accomplishments are all influenced by this work. And I didn't do that on purpose. I didn't realize it until we listed out all of our accomplishments that I was like, wow, that work has really become part of the culture in our department. As you know, the Armory Creative Campus is now open and being used regularly. The Armory supports equity work in numerous ways, not the least is providing community members a safe place along with resources for exploration and positive interaction, all while being dedicated to inclusive practices that center community voices from groups that are often underrepresented. Later this month and into July, the Armory will host art interventions that will allow organizations and staff the opportunity to test the waters on how future space and lease agreements can work. Following those interventions, a more comprehensive partner selection process will take place that will result in our first dedicated partners in the facility. And finally, we're scheduled to begin design on phase 1 improvements later this year, with construction beginning in 2024. City Council is going to get a more detailed presentation on the status of all things Armory Creative Campus at your July 18th business meeting, if everything stays on schedule. As some of you may recall, Ina Fennell, a longtime and beloved employee in our department, passed away in 2018. She left a substantial contribution to our scholarship fund, and that has allowed us to move from less than $4,000 annually awarding awards of recreation scholarships to an annual budget in 2023 of $22,000. With the confidence that we had funding, since this is a donation-based fund, we have created a process that allows us to open up to 20% of our camp registrations to scholarship qualifying families before camp is open to the general public. This is important because, as anyone with children that wants to attend our camps know, our camps fill very quickly, literally within hours of opening in the spring. This year we awarded $16,000 in scholarships for summer camps alone already, and that was before registration opened. Our customer service staff and recreation staff love having the ability to support these families and children in ways that just previously was not possible. And finally, for our team accomplishments, after many discussions between Squaxin Island Tribal Council and the City of Olympia Council, along with a renewed accord between the two governments, Squaxin Park was renamed on April 25th, 2022. The name Squaxin Park acknowledges the Squaxin people have inhabited and stewarded this land since time immemorial. Following the renaming, the city and Squaxin Island Tribe joined to celebrate the renaming and honored Indigenous Peoples Day in October of 2022. Hundreds of community members came to Squaxin Park to celebrate and enjoy the heartfelt testimonies, traditional performances, and eat together. The work hasn't stopped there, as currently staff are working with the Squaxin Island Tribe, Olympia Historical Society, and an intern from St. Martin's University to develop an interpretive sign that will be placed in the park. Together, all of this work is transformative for our community, and we are thankful for the leadership and dedication of many. Of course, the City of Olympia and Squaxin Island Tribe are currently working on plans for Indigenous Peoples Day 2023 this fall, so stay tuned for more information on that. Our final two recognitions as part of this are for individual staff. In March of this year, Laura Keehan, our Parks Planning and Design Manager, graduated from the Northwest Women's Leadership Academy. The Academy is a competitive year-long program designed to advance women in leadership roles who work in local government. It's no surprise that Laura was accepted and successfully completed the program, as she is a respected leader in the city that strives for excellence. Yet even the possession of all of her amazing strengths, this still was no small task to get through, and we want to recognize and congratulate Laura for her recent accomplishment. Lori couldn't be with us tonight, but all the same, still an amazing accomplishment. And finally, we want to recognize Director Paul Simmons for being awarded the Impact and Influence Award by the Washington Recreation and Parks Association last month. This is the highest recognition bestowed by WRPA to an individual and recognizes an individual's dedication and achievement in the field of parks and recreation. I could go on and on about what Paul has accomplished throughout his career, but we would be here, and I know you for a long time tonight, and I know you have a full agenda. So instead, I just want to lift up one thing that I really appreciate about his leadership. Paul models respectful disagreement. And in today's environment, I think that is a rare yet powerful character trait. Not only do I observe him appreciate the time and energy that our community members spend sharing concerns and asking questions, but he also encourages staff to question his concepts and debate other perspectives. And I believe in the end, that results in a stronger and more sustainable product, service, or decision. With that, I would like to give Paul the opportunity to accept your congratulations and provide him an opportunity for any closing comment.
Well, thanks everyone, and thank you, Scott, very much. I do want to highlight, I was listening to the proclamation, and we are more than parks and recreation, and it was something that I actually didn't have before coming to Olympia. I've worked for several parks and recreation, but when I got to Olympia, this was the first parks, arts, and recreation. And the arts is really a heartbeat within our department. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. This award was a really big deal. I've been involved in WRPA since my college years. And I wouldn't have the knowledge and the skills and the expertise I have without my WRPA connections and the experiences and opportunities WRPA has provided to me. So this was really meaningful when they honored me in May. Olympia is special. The last city that I worked for prior to me getting there had closed down their Parks and Recreation department. They faced some really challenging budget times, and I know it wasn't an easy decision, but it was an actual decision they had made. And when I got there, they were reopening it. And while they reopened it and are supporting Parks and Recreation today, it's not nearly to the level that Olympia is. And when I talk to colleagues across the state and tell them that we have 2 voted measures and a dedicated percentage of the general fund, they're in awe. And it's a testament to how much Olympians value parks, arts, and recreation. And I just feel humbled and lucky to be able to serve in this role as director to steward that. With the award, I really want to lift up just a few folks, Scott and also Silvana Niehauser, who couldn't be here tonight. We work as a tripod, and we wouldn't do half the things we do without their leadership and balance. And our entire leadership and really our entire department from top to bottom. We had a Juneteenth event on Sunday, and Silvana, who couldn't be there, asked me how it was, and I said it was amazing that the team makes it so fun. And it's not just the work, it's coming in with the smiles and the happy attitudes and really just enjoying the work that we do. I also want to thank my family. Not only do they support me in everything I do, they are my inspiration to the core and inspire me to do everything that I do. So I just want to thank them for being here. And then I just want to thank you all for taking a few minutes. You guys have so much on your plate. So taking some time to acknowledge Parks, Arts, and Recreation Month and the month of July. I just appreciate you placing some time on the agenda. So thank you so much.
All right, thank you. Does anybody want to add some additional comments? Councilmember Parsley?
I think he was first.
Oh, and then Councilmember Payne.
Paul and staff, Parks, Arts, and Recreation in the city of Olympia is not just about getting outdoors. It's not just about lawns and ballparks. You are the vehicle for putting out into our community our values, the DEI work that was mentioned earlier, the work we do with the Squaxin Tribe. You are one of our arms that allow us to do what we do in our community. So I just want to personally thank you. I'm very proud of our Parks, Arts, and Recreation.
Councilmember Payne.
So, Paul, I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank you and your department for another successful event this weekend with the Juneteenth event. It was fantastic, even though it rained and even hailed on us a little bit. But just tremendous gratitude to you and the department for that. And I also just want to take a moment to say that there's a saying that reminds me of you. It goes something like, if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. And I see that, when I see your posts on social media and things like that of you and your family at parks in different places in the country and things like that, it's like, is he working or is that just because he loves it? And I think it's just because you love it and you wear that and it's so obvious. And so we benefit from your passion and I so appreciate that. And thank you. Thank your family as well for sharing you with us.
Well said. Let's hear that up and down. Well said. Are we going to get a photo or is the family going to get a photo? Was there something that I thought I heard that
Kelly's got her phone.
Yes. Why don't you guys come up and we'll get a photo with the whole family? Okay. Can we do that, everybody?
Absolutely.
Okay. It's a big deal.
I'm gonna stall real quick and see if Young's just right here.
What'd you say?
Yes.
Gorgonzola.
All right, so we're going to keep a little bit with a theme. We're going to talk more about what's going on in the wonderful world of our arts department. And our next special recognition is recognizing our outgoing Olympia Poet Laureate. And this program is only, we'll find out. I think it's like 5, 6, no, it's almost 7 years now. Didn't mean to put you in on the spot, but in the short time that this program has existed, it has made such an impact on our community. And so really, really just thrilled to see the places that poetry has now touched our community. So I'm going to invite forward Stephanie Johnson, who's our arts program and planning supervisor, to talk about our outgoing poet laureate.
Thank you, Mayor Selby and members of the council. I am proud to say I am a member of Olympia Parks, Arts and Recreation. And we're here to celebrate Ashley McMunch, who is our outgoing poet laureate. Every 2 years, the City of Olympia selects a poet laureate to engage our entire community in the literary arts. Olympia's take on the position of poet laureate is less an honorary title and more about service over status. Duties include promoting poetry as an art form, expanding access to the literary arts, and encouraging poetry as a community voice that contributes to a sense of place. Ashley was the first poet laureate also to have a theme to their tenure, which was to use the power of poetry to foster insight, understanding, and healing around issues of equity and inclusion. During their term, McBunch conducted poetry workshops and readings, represented poetry and the city at Arts Walk, Love Oli, Juneteenth, and Capital City Pride. They contributed poetry at public art dedications, the Armory housewarming, and most recently, Olympia's new transgender celebration crosswalks. McBunch also participated in the inclusion of poetry in city processes as part of the Reimagining Public Safety community outreach to provide a centering art moment in the intensity of the process. The role of Olympia's Poet Laureate is much wider than the city, as they are invited to speak at organizations, schools, and agencies throughout the community. During their time as Poet Laureate, Ashley also contributed with local artists on art and writing projects and contributed to, in fullness of the word, an anthology of Black American Poet Laureates, which celebrates 22 Black American Poet Laureates from across America, the first anthology of its type ever published in the poetry world. I'd like to invite Ashley up to say a few words.
And Ashley, before you continue, I have something to present to you from the Olympia City Council.
Okay.
All right, so I'm going to read what it says. It says, City of Olympia Poet Laureate Ashley McBunch for using the power of poetry to foster insight, understanding, and healing around the issues of equity and inclusion in our community, July 1st, 2021 to June 30th, 2023, presented by the Olympia City Council.
Thank you. And my name's spelled right. Look at that. Thank you, Mayor Shelby and council members. I had the pleasure of being Olympia's third poet laureate. And in holding that title, I was also the city's first Black, non-binary, and disabled retired Army veteran poet laureate. During this time, I often wanted to clone myself to be at more places than my physical form could allow, as a representation of what poetry could look, feel, or sound like. Along with my city duties, my personal goal was to show that everyone in this room and beyond is a poet. And by facilitating and holding space for students through elders to explore that within themselves and in the world around them. I'd like to thank my partner, Courtney, and for supporting me through this journey. Thanks to Stephanie Johnson, who has always found time and a constant sounding board to my wild and crazy ideas, and the city for recognizing the value of poetry. I wish the next poet laureate the best in connecting with Olympia's residents and climate change and poetry. Thank you.
Oh, any comments from the dais?
Stay
Mayor
for
Pro-
just a moment.
Yes, we're not quite done. Councilmember Payne, followed by Mayor Pro Tem Gilman.
Congratulations and job well done. I just have to say, I recently felt like I got some time where I got to know you more, and my only regret is that I didn't get to know you much sooner. I got a little glimpse into what your life is like, including with your partner, Courtney, and I'll never read your words the same again, because I feel like I know a little bit about you and the lens with which you're speaking. And I just want to thank you for that. Thank you for your service to the city, and most especially thank you for writing about equity and inclusion, especially during our reimagining public safety process, which was a difficult time to get us through. And words of inspiration mean a lot when we're getting through challenging times. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Gilman, followed by Councilmember Parsley.
I just wanted to add to all the great words that are on your plaque that I think you also brought power and hope. Power to people, put more power to words, and the city's grateful for that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Parsley.
Mine's simple too, especially following these two. They're so eloquent. I just want to give you great thanks and relate to you when you've come to council and read your poems. It's like the world stops and you actually feel those words. And then you came and did an art break and you showed that all of us could actually write a poem, which was a blast. And I just wanted to say thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you.
In closing, I just looked down and I realized that I kept the poem that you wrote for us for our opening evening of council in January of 2023. We are the existence of hope. And so I'll carry this with me always. So thank you.
Yes.
Right. Okay, so now we go on to our time in the agenda for public comment. I have one person signed up remotely and two people in the chambers. So I will start with the people that signed up in chambers here. And this is a time for our community members to address council regarding items that are on our agenda or any items regarding city business. So you have 2 minutes, and I've got a countdown clock here in the chambers that you can use for reference. We just ask that you don't speak to public hearings that we've had in the last 45 days or we have upcoming in the next 45 days. And if you do, I'll just gently remind you to change topics. So at this point, I'd like to invite forward Terry Gonzalez, followed by David Monty.
Hello, thank you for hearing us. We're here because this is Lori and this is Joe. Their brother's missing, and he's missing from the jungle, homeless encampment. He's not homeless, but that was the last place he was seen. We feel that if the community at large knew what was really going on there, there would be a lot more public outrage than what we've seen about it. And the biggest, issue with it is you're looking at a place that has 0 laws. There, aside from drug dealing, rape, prostitution, murder, all the things that happen there, the health risks, now typhoid and dysentery are coming back into communities because of the amounts of fecal matter that are in some of these homeless camps. Environmental, there's a waterway that's going through there. What drugs, what things are going into that waterway? What we'd like to know, what's obvious is it needs to be shut down. 95% of the people that are at the jungle are not the people that become homeless because they live paycheck to paycheck. They don't go there. They don't live there. They go to sidewalk. They go to Salvation Army. They go to places where there are places for them to be. The people at the jungle are people who don't want laws and regulations. They don't want to live in a society that we have set up. So the big question is, how does it get shut down? That's our big question. What are you doing about it? Who's keeping track of these crimes that are going on? What does the public know about it? What can we do to get that place, and many like it, shut down? Because the police say their brother meant harm. They haven't caught the murderer yet, but
Thank you.
so.
Yes. So next we have, yes, thank you. Next we have David Monty.
Thank you, Mayor Selby and members of the council. I'm Dave Monti. I'm the president of the board of directors of the Deschutes Estuary Restoration Team, commonly known around here as DIRT. Since 2009, DIRT has been advocating for the removal of the Fifth Avenue Dam and restoration of the Deschutes River and Estuary. And thankfully, it looks like that's going to happen soon or soonish. Not least because of the unanimous support of the City Council, which we appreciated very much. I'm just here to say DIRT fully supports and congratulates you on the proposed creation of the Bud Deschutes Watershed Environmental Stewardship Coalition, along with the cities of Yale, Macy, and the Squaxin Island Tribe. It looks like a major leap forward in stewardship for the entire Deschutes watershed. And we commend you for taking this action. It looks like there will be some significant positive steps taken in that watershed because of the creation of the coalition. I did want to let you know that DIRT was the environmental representative to a group known as the Watershed Restoration and Enhancement Committee that the City of Olympia also participated in for nearly 3 years. That addressed a number of the same issues that the coalition will be looking at. And among the recommendations from that group was creation of the Deschutes Watershed Council. We've been working primarily with the City of Tumwater and Thurston County to try to get that council created with a broader scope of activities. We hope we can do that and work together with this coalition. And I also wanted to put in a quick plug for a community forum that DIRT is sponsoring Thursday night, 6 p.m. at the community center, where we're going to be doing an interesting presentation on the entire Deschutes watershed. And I hope people can attend. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we're going to switch to remote public comment, and we have one person signed up there, and that is Walter Jorgensen.
Walters Travel.
Okay.
My name is Walt Jorgensen. I own property in Olympia. My comment is about affordable housing and parking. The city submitted a grant application, ironically named Happy, to the Commerce Department in 2022 and talked about reductions, not eliminations, of parking requirements. In the application, you, the city, promised that, quote, public outreach will occur throughout the process and will involve more than just the required public hearing. We anticipate conducting an especially high level of public outreach around the reduction of parking requirements. Despite your commitment in a Commerce Department grant, you have not given the public any real opportunity to engage on this issue. As the proposals have worked their way through the Planning Commission and the Land Use and Environment Committee, they have been ever changing. And now tonight, you are poised to act on a proposal that the public has not been invited to consider. In fact, if no one pulls it from the consent calendar, it looks like you might not even talk about it. After the Regional Fire Authority debacle, which the public rejected by a 2-to-1 margin, I thought the council, along with Tumwater, had reached an all-time low in policy formulation expertise, not only not informing the public, but failing to inform themselves. And this sounds like the same thing. I recommend a reset to the original staff proposal of living up to the city's original commitment to the high level of public engagement made in the Commerce Department grant application. Thank you for the opportunity to comment.
Thank you. So that concludes our folks that signed up for public comment this evening. Now we have an opportunity to respond from the dais if we have any questions for staff or Councilmember Madrone.
Yeah, I just wanted to respond to Dave with the Deschutes Estuary Restoration Team. Thank you so much for coming and talking about the Deschutes Watershed Council. I remember this coming through that RIA 13 process, and I'm glad to hear that efforts have continued to bring that together. And I've sent the information about that proposal to our staff to see how the city of Olympia can be involved in that effort. And also, we've got this other Deschutes coalition forming around water rights and other stuff like that to see where these two bodies might intersect and potentially even work together on stuff. So thanks for coming and sharing that with us, and we're gonna dig into it and see what our role is in it, because I certainly would want us to be a part of it.
And then I just want to make a mention of the family of Daniel David Hughes that was here earlier talking about his disappearance. There is a reward the family is offering. It's $2,000 for information leading to the whereabouts of Daniel David Hughes. For our community that's listening, Mr. Hughes is about 5'7". He's about 60 years old, about 165 pounds. White male, brown eyes, brown and grayish hair. It's every family's nightmare when they cannot find a loved one like this. I also want to note for the record that our police chief is now meeting with the family along with our housing program manager to talk about what we can do as a city to help them. So thank you. All right. With that, Mayor Pro Tem Gilman.
I just want to ask for a clarification. We have an item on the agenda tonight that's about reestablishing basically the Bud Deschutes Watershed Environmental Stewardship Coalition. And I just wanted to be clear that that's separate. That's not the same thing as the Deschutes. Go ahead.
Yeah, the Deschutes Watershed Council is a proposal that came out of our RIA 13 process. It actually came through Land Use Committee a couple of years ago, and that was a proposal that came forward. The Deschutes coalition that we're voting on tonight has come about because of a water rights issue, and it's between Olympia, Lacey, Yelm, and the Squaxin Island tribe to address mitigation through habitat restoration. The Deschutes watershed council that Dave was speaking of is more modeled on the Nisqually River Council form in terms of watershed-wide planning. And so far, DIRT has been involved. I know the tribe has had some involvement, and then Tumwater and the county. And we should also be a part of that effort as well. And there is potential, just reading through the ILA, there is actually potential that these things could become one. But we'll see once we vote on the coalition and that gets off the ground, because part of the ILA is opening it up to other jurisdictions, because there are others within the Deschutes watershed that aren't currently involved in this coalition, and also nonprofit organizations, other interests can be involved. There's a work planning aspect to this ILA, so I think it would be really, really great if the two efforts merged together. But first, we got to get the first one off the ground first and see what the interests of those parties are. And either way, we got good stuff happening in the Deschutes.
Thank you for that clarification. We are going to now move forward to approve our consent calendar for the evening.
So moved.
Mayor, isn't that the approve the consent calendar minus 4M for separate action?
I was going to pull that after we get a motion in a second.
Oh, okay. Well, second.
Okay. Any questions, comments, or polls? I've got several. Did you want to start?
I would just, as Councilmember Madrone suggested, I would like us to pull item 4M, approval of an ordinance amending residential parking requirements for separate action.
All right. So we've got 4M pulled for separate action. And then I've got pulls for comment for items 4E, which is a resolution authorizing an interlocal agreement with the city of Lacey, Yelm, and Squaxin Tribe to establish the Bud Deschutes Watershed Stewardship Coalition, which we were just speaking of. Item 4F, we want to pull for comment, and that is a resolution authorizing an interlocal agreement with Thurston Regional Planning Council to facilitate a regional housing allocations process. And then I've got 4I, which is a resolution authorizing the execution of a real estate purchase and sale agreement. And then 4J is a resolution authorizing the execution of another real estate purchase and sale agreement. So we'll start with item 4E, and I'd like to invite forward Mark Russell. Kind of stick with our theme here about watershed here for a little bit longer.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. For the record, I'm Mark Russell, Interim Public Works Director. It's my pleasure tonight to highlight this action. Tonight before you is an interlocal agreement between the cities of Olympia, Lacey, Yelm, and the Squaxin Island Tribe, establishing the Bud Deschutes Watershed Environmental Stewardship Coalition. This coalition brings the cities and tribe together around habitat restoration and improving the biological health of the Deschutes watershed. This agreement builds on a memorandum of understanding dating from 2011. The MOU stemmed from water rights mitigation efforts related to drinking water supplies the cities had been pursuing at that time. This involved significant collaboration and coordination with the tribe. Due to the challenges and the ultimate overturning of Yelm's water rights, the launch of the coalition had been put on hold. Once Yelm's water rights issues were resolved last year, the coalition was able to move forward again. The agreement before you tonight includes several updates and refinements to the original Memorandum of Understanding that will help the coalition better achieve its goals. Together, the three cities have pledged a total of $500,000 in seed funding to support watershed restoration projects throughout the coalition. The hope is to use these funds as matching dollars to pursue habitat restoration grants to accomplish even more. For Olympia, our funding, about $167,000, comes from the drinking water utility as part of the original water rights mitigation efforts. And then for planning on assuming your action tonight, on July 12th, the 3 cities and the Squaxin Island tribe are planning a signing ceremony for this agreement. The signing ceremony will take place next to the Deschutes River in the upper watershed on property owned by the 3 cities. This is a beautiful location where the cities have already done significant restoration work, and there is a lot more possible. Additional information about that event will be coming soon to you as those plans are finalized. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mark. Any questions? You did a great job.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next item 4F, which is another interlocal agreement. I'd like to invite forward Tim Smith with our Community Planning and Development Department.
Hey, good evening, Mayor and City Council. For the record, I'm Tim Smith. I'm the Deputy Director of Community Planning and Development, and I'm here tonight to talk about item 4F, which is an interlocal agreement with Thurston Regional Planning Council to facilitate a regional process to allocate state-assigned housing forecasts to Thurston County and its cities for comprehensive planning purposes. In 2021, the Washington State Legislature approved an amendment to the Growth Management Act requiring local governments to plan and accommodate for housing affordable to all income levels. This strengthened the previous goal of the GMA, Growth Management Act, which was to encourage affordable housing. The Washington State Department of Commerce has completed an assessment of total housing needs in each county for moderate, low, very low, and extremely low income households, and for emergency housing, emergency shelters, and permanent supportive housing. The total housing must now be allocated across the county and its cities. All jurisdictions within Thurston County will need to review and revise their comprehensive plans by June 30, 2025 to address the new housing allocation requirements. The city has kicked off this comp plan process over the next 2 years, which will include a new housing element for the city. The proposed interlocal agreement is for Thurston Regional Planning Council, or TRPC, to facilitate a process among Thurston County and all its cities to decide on a method or methodology to allocate housing needs to each local government. Olympia would pay $5,625 to TRPC as its equal share of the cost to conduct the regional process. Olympia's share will be paid from existing budget of the Community Planning and Development Department. There's no additional funding necessary for this project. And with that, do you have any questions?
Any questions? Mayor Pro Tem Gilman?
Tim, I was curious. So first, I just thought we were taking the commerce spreadsheets that were published just at their face. Then I heard there's sort of 2 ranges. And then the staff report, it says that both, I believe it's King and Pierce counties created their own way. So how much flexibility is in the legislation about taking Commerce's estimates or creating some other path to get to this breakdown by income and wealth housing?
I think there is some flexibility. I haven't looked at the spreadsheets, but given the spreadsheets plus the 2 examples, there's probably some room there for Thurston County to figure out its best approach for the methodology we use.
All right, Councilmember Madrone?
What's the timeline for this work?
Timeline for this work? I imagine it would be over the next several months. I'd have to look back at the timeline, but our intent is to have it feed into our process, which our housing update, I think, is scheduled for 2024. And so this baseline information would then feed into that process with adoption in 2025. But I can confer with Leonard. I'm not sure what the exact timeline is for the number of meetings. It may probably over the next 6 months is my guess, but I can follow up.
Sorry, I didn't mean to surprise you.
No, that's fine.
I think there is a schedule on the last page of the staff report.
There is, and Tim hit it. I mean, we really, our end date is to have this in time for the 2025 comp plan update. But there's some other sub schedules that will come before that to make sure we hit that deadline, and we can follow up with council when we got that more detailed schedule.
Okay. Thank you, Tim.
All right, thank you.
Next up, we have 4I and 4J, and that is both related to purchase and sale agreements for properties that we want to turn into affordable housing. So I'm inviting forward Jacinda Stelchis to talk about that. She's our Affordable Housing Program Manager in our Office of Community Vitality.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Sorry about that. So Tim gave me a great kind of segue into this topic, so thank you. So again, Jacinda Stelchis with our Housing and Homeless Response Team, Affordable Housing Program Manager. First is for purchase and sale agreement with Low Income Housing Institute, also known as Lehigh, for development of a permanent supportive housing project on Franz Anderson Road. Very quickly, a little bit of background. The county and Olympia purchased this property in March of 2022 to be used for affordable housing purposes. Our team released an RFP, a request for proposals, in February. And out of that process, we have had some great regional support through the Regional Housing Council. City of Tumwater, City of Lacey, City of Olympia, obviously, and Thurston County all participated in a scoring process of those proposals and selected Lehigh to do this project. So the project itself is 71 units. That unit count may change slightly as they move forward, but we're looking about 70 units, primarily one bedroom and studio apartments for households, individuals that are earning 30% or less of area median income. So Tim had talked a little bit about our work with TRPC, about identifying the number of units, both for by income range, but also permanent supportive housing units. So this is a project that is in support of those units that will need to be created. It's a first of its kind out of Regional Housing Council. City of Tumwater and City of Tumwater and Thurston County are supporting this with ARPA funds, American Rescue Plan Act, which is huge. And City of Lacey is also contributing funding the general fund. So regionally, we have $6.7 million going toward this project. City of Olympia will manage the project as we are the legal owners. And again, Lehigh will be the developer and operator once it is constructed. So we are expecting from here on out our timeline. They will pursue funding. Lehigh will. We are likely looking at units in early 2026. And before I move on to the next item, any questions?
Mayor Pro Tem Gilman.
We had a question at the Three Cities meeting about will there be some units that will be couples? Will there be more than one person in some units?
Potentially, yes.
Okay.
All right. You can go on to item 4J.
All right. So this is another purchase and sale agreement. So this is for property at 303 Franklin. I first want to also bring the council, I'm sure is well aware that this is property that is on your guys' work plan, 2023 work plan for developing. So our team heard you, and we have worked hard with TWG. They are a developer that has been recognized by the Affordable Housing Finance, kind of not to get too geeky, but kind of a big deal that they are a developer out of our community, but they are number 5, top 50 of 2022 developers, and they are interested in Olympia, and they want to develop here. So this will be, again, right around about 80 units at 303 Franklin, so just down the street here, of permanent housing, primarily one bedroom, again, and studio, with approximately half of those units dedicated to, again, individuals or couples earning 30% or below of area median income. So we're working on the same timeline here with units likely available in early 2026. But between the two purchase and sale agreements, looking at approximately 150 units that we're bringing to the community. So we're very excited about that. And very excited about working with TWG and their interest in Olympia. They've been fabulous to work with so far. And any questions?
More just a comment for people that don't know exactly where 3rd and Franklin or 303 Franklin Street is in Olympia. It's the former mitigation site near the transit center. So this is just a wonderful outcome for where we were starting back in 2018 or 19, I guess. So anyhow, it's just a really wonderful way to kind of bring that back to a productive outcome for that property. So, thank you. All right. Last is our pull for separate action, and that's item 4M. And that is approval of an ordinance amending residential parking requirements. I won't read all the background and analysis. And if does anyone here need to have Joyce Phillips come up and give us any context for what we're voting on?
Do we need to?
No? Okay. Councilmember Cooper?
Good. Mayor, excuse me. Do we need to close the rest of the consent calendar before we do separate action on this?
Sure, we could.
Yes, it'd be great to take a vote on the rest of the consent calendar first.
Okay. Separate action over here. We're going to vote on the consent calendar over here. All right. We have a first and a second to adopt tonight's consent calendar. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Now we're on to item 4M. This is separate. And this is also pulled because it's first and final, which is unusual, but it's related to a timing issue with the grant. And so this is regarding our parking minimums in residential neighborhoods along corridors. And so I'm just going to go ahead and Councilmember Nguyen.
I'd like to take you up on having Joyce come up here, even with just a brief overview, and she is right there. So I think this could be helpful for folks that are viewing.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you, Joyce. We had a robust conversation a few weeks ago, but we'll get a little, everybody else that wasn't, watching us closely. Now you get to, hi.
I'm Joyce Phillips, Principal Planner in Community Planning and Development, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. At our meeting 2 weeks ago, I went through the progression of the proposal and the Planning Commission and the Land Use and Environment Committee, and then some modifications were made to that draft ordinance, and so you have before you this evening an ordinance that implements those changes from the discussion at the last council meeting. So I'm happy to answer any questions. I didn't prepare a presentation, but I'm happy to answer any questions or talk about the process.
Thank you. Any questions for Joyce? Councilmember Payne.
Hi, Joyce. Just thank you. No questions. Don't want to surprise you. But I did just want to point out that tonight we are voting on first and final reading of this. And the reason for that is because the Department of Commerce requires us to pass this in order to get the $16,000 grant that will be used for this. So that's why we have to adopt it on first and final reading tonight. Just wanted to provide that additional context.
Any other?
I wasn't sure if you had something set already, Joyce. I won't put you on the spot too much, but I was hoping for a quick overview for folks to understand. Believe it or not everyone watches all of our meetings. But thank you. Sure. Would you like me to go through the progression of the recommendation? If you'd be so kind.
Okay.
If it helps, I have the staff report right here, and I can summarize what's in front of me from June 6th, because I don't if that's helpful.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah.
All right. So at your June 6th, your council decision, which is in front of you tonight, retains current exemptions in the downtown and for accessory dwelling units, removes parking minimums for residential units in the Capitol Mall Triangle subarea, removes parking minimums within a half mile of frequent transit service. That's transit service that's at least 4 times per hour, at least 12 hours a day. Requires that all other residential units in the city to have a minimum of 0.5 parking spaces per unit. Requires at least 1 ADA space for multifamily projects 5 units or more, and retains the current maximum of 1.5 spaces per unit for residential developments with 3 or more units.
And it was passed 4-2 back on June 6th. Correct. I do have one question. When's the last time, because there's been many iterations or changes to this ordinance over the course of the time it came from staff recommendation to the Planning Commission. When's the last time there was a public hearing?
I believe the public hearing was March 6th. There's a summary in the staff report with the progression of the dates. The Planning Commission had a couple of briefings on it and then held a public hearing. They extended the public comment period until, I believe, April 7th, and then they had their deliberations on April 17th. So, but the public hearing was in March. I just don't remember if it was the 6th or the 20th.
Okay. Okay. So thank you for that clarification. All right. So we need a motion.
I move to waive second reading and approve the attached ordinance amending residential parking requirement code requirements on first and final reading.
Second.
Any further discussion? Council Mayor Pro Tem Gilman.
I would like to speak against the motion. There are too few opportunities in our lives for second chances, but tonight is a second chance to reconsider our new residential parking laws. In our application to the Department of Commerce grant that funded this work, we said public outreach will occur throughout the process and will involve more than just the required public hearing. We anticipate conducting an especially high level of public outreach around the reduction of parking requirements. Instead, at our last meeting, we debated and passed a proposal created by one person hours before the meeting. So I think we're broadly in agreement that housing is too expensive for many in our community. We're in agreement that we must continue to create a more welcoming and equitable community, addressing issues including single-family zoning that were created to enforce racial and economic class segregation. We're in agreement that the current parking requirements limit the population density in our city. In my opinion, we started with a reasonable recommendation from staff to basically reduce current parking requirements by half. This draft included public presentations, discussion, and a high level of public comment. As the effort passed from Planning Commission to Land Use and finally to Council, in my opinion, things just went from bad to worse. The proposal before us, I don't believe is reasonable, nor did it have the promised especially high level of public outreach. In the 2023 Community Engagement and Public Opinion Survey that we were just presented, 70% of the people surveyed said Olympia is on the wrong track. This opinion worsened significantly since 2021. Only 31% felt confident that the city listens to the feedback it receives from residents. We have a lot of work to do. It's time for us to stop telling Olympia what we're going to do to them and time to start listening to what Olympians think and co-creating solutions together with the community. So I ask you to join me in voting no on this hasty proposal and working with our community to create reasonable changes to parking requirements.
Any other comments? Councilmember Payne.
Yes, I just wanted to respond to some of the points you made, Mayor Pro Tem, about that. First of all, we appreciate you sharing your perspective. I do want to push back a bit on the idea that there is that one person created this. So Councilmember Madrone, thank you for your work, but there was certainly consulting with other council members, as we're all representatives of the city at large. And so the idea that this just comes from one person, I don't think is wholly accurate. But I will also say that there was an adequate amount of time since the Planning Commission took this up at the beginning of this year, and that's when these conversations started. And I believe at the last meeting where we voted on this, there was an extensive chart of the timeline of this. And at that time, we did provide, we did have opportunity to hear from the public. We received hundreds of emails on this. And in fact, that input was used precisely for me to come to my determination not to accept the original ordinance as proposed, which is why we're here tonight with a totally different proposal. And so I will say that the public did have an opportunity to weigh in and sort of shift perspective, if you will, on tonight's vote. And so that's all I have to offer. Yeah, thank you.
Anyone else? All right. All in favor of item 4M, approval of an ordinance amending residential parking requirements, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Nay. It passes 5-2. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joyce. Okay, so we are now on to the next part of the agenda, which is a public hearing on the Community Development Block Grant Program's 5-year consolidated plan update and the program year for 2023 annual plan. And to explain what all that means is Anastasia Everett, who is our program specialist in the CDBG program.
Thank you, Mayor Selby. Good evening, Mayor Selby and council members. For the record, my name is Anastasia Everett. I am the city's Community Development Block Grant Specialist. Thank you for this opportunity to present staff's recommendations for the 2023 to 2027 Consolidated Plan Update and the 2023 Annual Action Plan. The city receives an annual allocation of Community Development Block Grant, or CDBG, funding from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development as an entitlement community. CDBG is a flexible grant that can be used for a variety of activities. The city's annual allocation is typically between $350,000 and $400,000. These are examples of eligible activities. Activities can be carried out by the grantee or through subrecipients. Subrecipients are eligible nonprofit organizations. Each eligible activity must also meet a national objective. The primary objectives are a benefit to low and moderate income persons, slum or blight removal, and urgent need. The City of Olympia has a 3-year certification period. So over 3 program years, at least 70% of our CDBG funding must be used to meet the low mod income national objective. I am presenting this evening as a part of our public participation plan. Every spring, staff prepare an annual action plan with proposed activities and goals. The city's program year starts September 1st. This year also includes our consolidated plan update. The process includes 3 primary parts. The first, public and stakeholder input, followed by drafting the consolidated plan and annual action plan. Both Thurston County and Olympia have completed soliciting projects to allocate 2023 funds, followed by action to approve the consolidated plan and the 2023 action plan and submission to HUD by July 15th, 2023. Allocations of funds from Congress have never been consistent. The estimates are based on 2023 allocations and assumed for the next 5 years, but may very well change. The results from our consolidated plan update process identified housing as the top priority need for our community. Goals for CDBG funding should reflect the consolidated plan needs annually in our action plan. The priority goals are increasing affordable housing, preservation of existing affordable housing, and services to improve housing. Next, I'd like to present our 2023 Annual Action Plan proposed projects. This table is an overview of our proposed projects and allocation. There are approximately $50,000 of prior year funds shown in this chart. Allocating them now during the action plan process will improve the city's ability to meet its timeliness test next July. Rebuilding Together Thurston County provides critical home repair to low-income homeowners regionally. The city's CDBG award is used only on homeowners within the City of Olympia. Examples of critical home repair performed by Rebuilding Together include re-roofing, emergency plumbing repairs, and health and safety additions to the home. Proposed funding for 2023 is $75,000. South Puget Sound Habitat for Humanity's Critical Home Repair Program is also region-wide. Examples of improvements include the construction of steps, porch or wheelchair ramps, window replacement or repair, siding and trim repair, and interior accessibility improvements. Funds will be used for homeowners within the City of Olympia, and proposed funding is $77,500. An award of $77,500 is proposed to the subrecipient Enterprise for Equity. Enterprise for Equity will meet the low moderate income limited clientele national objective and will provide technical assistance and business training to low income business owners in the City of Olympia. $60,000 of public service funding is proposed to the community court program. This is a change in what staff had presented to the CLIPS meeting on April 26th. Funds would be used to support the restorative justice coordinator and expand the hours for community course case manager. Key services provided by this program include providing housing resources for houseless participants and case management. Home's first electrification is an existing project. Additional funding is proposed to expand the number of rental homes receiving energy-efficient heating upgrades. This project is a great example of how CDBG funding can be used in energy efficiency improvements and help reach Olympia's climate action goals. Planning and administrative costs are included in the proposed budget. Costs support city staff to administer a compliant program. The city and the county are contracted with a consultant to prepare our 2023 to 2027 consolidated plan update. During the update process, the consultant had advised the city to include contingency projects in our annual action plan. The inclusion of contingency projects will allow staff flexibility in planning during the annual action plan. Staff recommend home rehabilitation and public services as contingency projects. This is a timeline of the process. The public hearing is this evening, and consideration of approval is scheduled at the July 11th City Council meeting. And a reminder that we are still accepting public comment for these plans until July 5th at 5 p.m. Thank you for this opportunity to present, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, Anastasia. Any questions? It's very thorough. It's a very complicated program, and so you did a really good job distilling it down.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. So at this time, I'm going to open the public hearing on the Community Development Block Grant Program 5-Year Consolidated Plan Update and Program Year 2023 Annual Action Plan. There was nobody that signed up online or before our meeting this evening, but with public hearings, I always allow people that might have gotten here late an opportunity to speak during the public hearing. It's like public comment. Except you have 3 minutes. Is there anybody that would like to speak on the public hearing tonight? Is there anybody that would like to speak? All right. Close the public hearing on item 5A. Thank you very much, Anastasia. All right, we're moving on to item 6A, which is approval of the Poet Laureate for 2023-2025. And you're not just imagining this. We just said goodbye to last year's Poet Laureate, Ashley McMunch. And so we're being very efficient and moving right forward into our next appointment for this post. And so we have Stephanie Johnson, who's joined by Jim Burlingame, who is the chair of our Arts Commission, to talk about.
Thank you, Mayor Selby and members of council. Stephanie Johnson, again from Parks, Arts, and Recreation. And if you are just tuning in, every 2 years, the City of Olympia selects a Poet Laureate to engage our entire community in the literary arts. Olympia's Poet Laureate is less an honorary title and more about service over status. Duties include promoting poetry as an art form, expanding access to the literary arts, and encouraging poetry as a community voice that contributes to a sense of place. Olympia's had 3 poets laureate to date. In answer to your question, Mayor Selby, we started the program in 2017. And Olympia's next poet laureate will be called specifically to utilize the power of poetry and language to contribute to thoughtful response and centering around our environment and climate change.
Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, Madam Mayor and council members. I was looking at these pictures. It's so interesting because it reflects my time serving on the Arts Commission. I was not on the Arts Commission, but a project that Amy Solomon Menarche, is that who's her name? Wrapped up her time as the first City of Olympia Poet Laureate doing was an anthology, and I had 2 of my poems in that anthology. And then I joined the Arts Commission the following spring and participated in the projects and the consideration of Sadie and Ashley. So this is pretty cool. And now we're continuing on to present to you the Arts Commission's recommendation for the 4th Poet Laureate for the City of Olympia. The Arts Commission assembled a selection committee to review applications and interview applicants. Upon their consideration, the Arts Commission recommends Kathleen Bird to the City Council for Olympia Poet Laureate 2023 to 2025. The committee appreciated Ms. Bird's deep, rich perspective on community with an interest in meeting people where they are at, as well as a balance of urgency and reflection in their poetry. Ms. Bird is a professor of English and creative writing at South Puget Sound Community College and has brought issues of climate change into her curriculum and her poetry. Your staff report includes Ms. Bird's application and submitted reading. The motion before you tonight is to approve Kathleen Bird as Poet Laureate 2023 to 2025.
Thank you. Thank you. We do not have Ms. Bird with us.
We do not.
All right.
There's always there's always a chance that it's not going to go that way. So we
Yes.
and she's also out of 10.
Good contingency planning. I like that. It's very fair. So any questions for our arts department representatives? All right. It was quick. So I think we're great. So now I just need a motion to approve. Councilmember Parsley.
I move to approve the recommendation for the 2023 to 2025 Poet Laureate as recommended by the Arts Commission.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, motion passes. Thank you so much. Have a good evening. Next, yay. All right, next, I think there's some people here that might be interested in this next one. I'm not sure. Let me see. Item 6B is Creative District Update. Anybody? Yeah. All right. So really excited to invite forward Mike Reed, who is our Economic Development Director, and he's joined by an able team around this subject matter, and really, really excited to hear where we are.
So thank you, Council. Again, for the record, my name is Mike Reed. I'm the Economic Development Director for the City of Olympia. I want to put this presentation in a little bit of context for you. So in 2021, I came before you and I asked for a funding package for economic recovery, recognizing that we were still deeply in the throes of COVID, and we were starting to think about what is the future going to look like? And we knew that the creative economy is going to be something that will help pull us out and be a strong component of our future. At the same time, we were relying pretty heavily on our partners to help lift the load for us. So at that time, we negotiated a scope of work with the Olympia Downtown Alliance. And as a part of that scope of work, I put in there what at first felt like a small task of, we'd like you to develop or like you to lead a process to develop a strategic plan for the Olympia Creative District. And what is being presented to you tonight is that strategic plan. Having a strategic plan for the Creative District is actually required for us to remain in compliance with the Washington Arts Commission. And so they have done us an incredible favor by completing this work for us. And normally you would wait till the presentation is over to heap some praise, but I'd like to do it in advance. The presentation tonight will be given by Desiree Freeland, who was brought on as the staff person at the Olympia Downtown Alliance to lead this process. Desiree's done an incredible job with this work. You'll hear the presentation. And the reason you've got so many people in the room watching this tonight is because the Olympia Downtown Alliance, I think, did a fantastic job of setting a table for this conversation and making sure that they had an inclusive dialogue that had people from across our community in downtown, in the arts, listened to artists, listened to creatives, and worked on creating this plan. So with that, I'm going to give the microphone over to Desiree to have her give you the presentation on the strategic plan for the Creative District.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. First, I would like to, before we get started, I'd like to bring Mariella, who is the Advisory Committee Co-Chair, up to lead me into conversation.
Thanks, Desiree. Thanks everyone for being here tonight. I just wanted to sort of kick it off. Mike did an amazing job of introducing the work that we did. As you can see, many of the people who participated in this committee have shown up tonight to just show their support for all the work that we did. We were a group of artists, business owners, and stakeholders for our community in the creative economy, and we're all really excited about the work that we've done. We had tons of meetings led by Desiree and Todd, and I'm hoping that you are pleased with the work that we did tonight. Thanks.
Thanks, Mariella. And before I get started, I would like to offer apologies on behalf of my executive director, Todd Cutts. He would have loved to have been here tonight, but he is enjoying a high school graduation for his eldest son. So if you happen to see the Cutts family out and about, please feel free to offer your congratulations to them. All right, let's talk Creative District. Again, just want to take a moment and acknowledge the advisory committee and just kind of bring to note that this advisory committee is constructed of creative industry leaders here in Olympia. And I want to make special note that meaningful consideration to Black, Indigenous, and people of color with additional focus towards local artists, creatives, and professionals that best represent Olympia informed this creative district process or creative committee selection process. A little bit of background, Mike touched on this. So in 2019, the City of Olympia received their official designation from the Washington State Arts Commission as a creative district. And then 2020, full stop. 2021, we entered into that economic recovery contract with the City of Olympia, and part of that scope of work, as Mike alluded to, was to develop these initial phases of the creative district and the strategic plan. So let's talk about the community benefits of the Creative District. Really, what we heard throughout our entire process is that the Creative District should be a hub of resources that's centered around access. And these points illustrate, I believe, and the advisory committee believes, provide artists, illustrate that the access that the Creative District could provide artists and creatives in the community. We're talking about professional resources. We're talking about having access to folks who understand the unique challenges and barriers that artists and creatives face in this community. We're talking about networking opportunities, the opportunity to work outside of a silo and really develop that community. And we're talking about what a thriving creative economy really is and how alluring it is and could be favorable as we look to bring talent to the area and to the region. And we're also talking about how that attractiveness helps to elevate our advocacy efforts. Additionally, the Creative District as an economic driver, we're again looking at it as a hub. It's bringing folks together, it's shining a light on the collaborative nature of community for the betterment of the Downtown Olympia Creative District. It develops Olympia as an economic hub that highlights our unique and decidedly different amenities. This slide illustrates really the process and timeline that we went through starting in February 2022. I think it also illustrates for us that we took our time, that we were deliberate in this process and in the steps that we took in developing this plan. So this is probably one of the more fun slides in this entire presentation. It really illustrates some of the projects that other creative districts, not just in Washington State, but in Colorado, were able to do. Top left, we're looking at some large steel panels that the Creative District in TWISP put together, and those panels are meant to connect their community around their foundational values. Up top right, we're looking at the Soundcheck Arts Festival from Port Townsend. That creative district was able to develop this festival leading as a secondary festival leading up to a larger arts and music festival, thus creating a week-long tourist attraction to Port Townsend instead of just the weekend-long attraction that they had with their initial festival. Bottom right is from Greeley, Colorado. This is an interactive map, and that map has a host of information available. It talks to people who engage it about who the artists are, where they can find those public art installations, where they can find other art by those same artists, how long those installations will be around, whether they're indoors or outdoors and on. And then this last part is really kind of the big grand poobah of all creative district projects. And in Trinidad, Colorado, it's a common space where they are working to make co-making, flex retail, and kitchen space open. And eventually, I believe their mission is to make it affordable housing available to artists in their community. So this leads us into our public engagement process. This infographic kind of just highlights 606 unique survey responses. That's survey responses of folks who were able to identify as either creative folks in our community or non-creative folks in our community. So really interesting to have the perspective from both sides. We held 10 hour-long stakeholder interviews, and we identified stakeholders for this process as our advisory committee members. We held 7 listening sessions, and we allowed, or our advisory committee asked to engage their stakeholders and their creative industry sectors to be part of the process. And we had 40 participants from those listening sessions engage with us, for a total of 658 total number of people engaged in our process. So our vision statement, mission statement, and values, I'll refer you back to our timeline and the public engagement components because those pieces really translated into the vision and mission statement, and additionally, the creative district values. The vision is not just a vision statement to have a vision statement. Really, it's not just for the artists and creatives, but also for the people who are experiencing the art, people who come to Olympia to experience the artist culture and community. And the mission statement fully centered with the artist and creative community in mind. And these values speak to what this advisory committee felt were the center points of the artistic and creative community in Olympia. I just want to take a brief pause here for the racial equity statement. It was through much conversation that this advisory committee ultimately felt passionately about illustrating how the creative district should continue to show up for, support, and center artists in Olympia. So goals. These goals were developed and workshopped through several work sessions the advisory committee participated in. And each one of these goals has up to 4 initiatives, which further outlines potential leaders, potential partners, funding sources, and initial implementation frameworks. So building community, this is our first goal. I won't read you the definition. These initiatives, it's really about that. It's really about building community. Again, very artist-centered and artist-focused, really leaning into what it is to have community. Support up at the top, again, there's not a lot of reading between the lines here. It's very artist focused, providing that support and really kind of showing up for one another, whether that's providing some additional training or access to resources, helping artists and creatives in this community develop some level of financial solvency. Promotions is about amplifying that voice of the artists in the communities and showing what exactly the depth of the creative community here in Olympia. Space, advocacy for artists and creatives who needs very specific affordable space to create, practice, and conduct business. I mean, that is really the best definition that anyone can come up with for space when you're talking about artists and creatives in a community. And there are very specific reasons that artists need space for very specific forms of art. So this one was a big one, along with access. That equitable piece of having accessibility, again, not just for artists, though it is artist-centered, artist and creative-centered, but for the community to be able to engage with the work that artists and creatives do. Which brings us to the administration. So these are the 5 potential opportunities for administration of the creative district. This is just what we were able to kind of come up with. They're in no particular order, but there are some that are more favorable than others. And I think at this point, it's appropriate to say and mention that city staff is having conversations with the Olympia Arts Space Alliance to potentially lead the effort in being administrators for the creative district. So we're super excited for those conversations, and OAA board members are here tonight to listen and hear and field any feedback council may have. And that's all for my presentation, but I would like to invite my other advisory committee co-chair, Aslyn Mead, to come up and put a bow on this for us.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. It's nice to be back. Aslyn Mead, Thurston Economic Development Council, board member of the ODA, and one of the co-chairs here. Just have to say first off, Desiree is a rock star and a workhorse, and that is a rare combination of skill sets, and it was not an easy task. If you can think about the expression herding cats, think about artists of all walks of life. So I would just say personally, I think many of you can relate to this, certainly in this audience. Like, this did come out of the pandemic. Like, especially our performing arts were decimated. Like, it was horrific. And I know that I felt a calling. I wanted to serve the arts in some way. And when the ODA board membership came up, it was really to be able to engage in this process that I joined the board. So it was the perfect time, right? With the Armory coming online that same year, the Inspire Olympia initiative. So, I mean, it was like a critical mass time. And I just want to say, like, I saw the best of Olympia. Like, I saw people who could never agree politically or in taste of music together in rooms for 4 hours at a time. I saw people, when it came to the arts, put aside every kind of difference and work together and do so with a passion and a joy. And it was inspiring. And it made me proud to be part of this community. So,
thank you.
So with that, and we'll allow you to ask questions of them as well, but I did want to put an additional sort of further bow on that. As Desiree mentioned, as a staff, there were the multiple ways that you could administer a creative district presented. There's more detail in the actual strategic plan, which was attached to the staff report. And we're more than willing to meet with any of you if you would like to go and take a deeper dive into any of the elements associated with the strategic plan. I will tell you from a staff's perspective, we are recommending taking the guidance of utilizing a nonprofit administrator associated with the creative district. So some creative districts get managed by the city. Some creative districts get managed by the Main Street organization. Some creative districts get managed by an arts nonprofit or an arts agency. A city can meter out certain tasks to be done by certain folks. I think in what you saw tonight, when we're willing to give up some control and empower those that do this kind of work and invest in them to do this kind of work, you get those kinds of results that have the people that do that work bought in at the core level. Thinking about trying to take this away and have this run and administered exclusively by us as a city program, I think it loses some of that power. So we'll be working as staff with the Olympia Art Space Alliance to think about ways that this could be developed and what that would look like over time. And then as a part of the budget process for the coming year, you may see something associated with continuing this work there. So happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you for bringing that back around to administration, because if we don't, all this work we don't want it to stop. And so if we do not move forward with how to figure out how to administer it, then we're not doing it justice. So I'll start with Councilmember Wen, followed by Councilmember Parsley.
I don't have a question at this point. I would love to take a deeper dive. It's not extremely time sensitive. This is something I'm excited about. I just want to say thank you so much for all of your work. When you all, I'll be honest, you all came in at different times, and so I think I didn't quite put the dots together, and I was like, they're like so cool with each other. It's like, what's going on? And then of course there's this, but there is a clear energy here in the room amongst all of you. And I was trying to quickly, before Desiree shifted the slide, but the slide with all of the folks. I know not everyone's in the room now, but all of the folks and then the organizations. And it was really exciting to kind of go through really quickly and be like, oh, I know that person. Oh, I would never see them in a room with that person. It was just kind of happening for you all. And we're a small community, so you've probably had your fair share of that too, but really, really exciting stuff. And looking forward to seeing how we can put some dollars behind this. And I really appreciate that recommendation too, and you're a part of the city. So it's nice to have a part of the city say, hey, let's step back a second, right? So that something can really thrive.
All right, next I have Councilmember Parsley, followed by Councilmember Madrone.
I just want to echo Councilmember Wen's comments. Thank you for this work. And one comment and one question. I tend to agree with you, Mike. We've got the creative minds in the room. We should probably let the creative minds work the creative district. And I too would like a deeper dive, personally. And yes, being chair of finance, I'm interested in what the budget impact will be, but I think there's ways to find this. And how much of this is capable for Inspire Olympia, these projects?
If you're a non-profit engaged in public programming, you are eligible to apply.
Correct.
Okay.
Take it off the top.
Darian left the room, but I've been wondering about and pushing for a while for affordable housing for artists. I see that's, I saw that as part of your building community when I read through this plan. And I would love to have our housing group meet with this coalition to start having conversations, because before we rightfully settled on Rebecca Howard Park, one of the ideas on that property was a single room occupancy or micro housing. And I always thought it would be very cool to do an artist version of that with some space in there that the city could dig into affordable housing and put this right in the middle of the the creative district. So I'd love to have that kind of marriage. We've done good at marrying our climate work with our housing. Let's do our creative district with our housing.
Okay, doke. Next I have Councilmember Madrone, followed by Mayor Pro Tem Gilman.
I want to thank you all for being here, and thank you for all of your work to bring this together. I remember in my first year on council, this came to the land use committee of all places because it was dealing with an area downtown. And Mary Grace, you were the sole power behind it. And then we made you so busy with the cultural access program. And I was really, really glad to see us working with the Olympia Downtown Alliance to really move this forward. And, it was just, that recommendation that we, have somebody else take the leadership on this moving forward. I mean, that's what we did to really get it off the ground to begin with. And I think that is super cool. And I'm here, I heard a couple of folks from the dais say that they're interested in taking a deeper dive into it. And other than this coming through our budget process for those next step, I'm kind of curious, if this were to come back to a council committee as it's coming together. I don't know if that land use is the right one for it, but or maybe it's okay. I wanted to see you before I just volunteer you to do something. I think community livability and public safety would be the committee that there could be a report back to in terms of how things are shaping up. I think that would be really, really good. And again, I'm really excited about this. I thank you all so much for your work and the collaborative effort. And actually, I'm just now remembering, Aslan, I remember emailing you about this back in like 2020 to talk about like the local food aspect and like, how do we define local food? So it's really great to have you in the room here. Feels very full circle. So thank you all so much.
All right, next I have Mayor Pro Tem Gilman, followed by Councilmember Cooper.
Well, I'm just going to echo the praise for the people and the process and the outcome. Thank you so much. And then I just wanted to express my strong confidence in the Olympia Art Space Alliance to administer. I think it's really, they've really demonstrated over the last several years ways to activate spaces, to include people, to create opportunities for art. And I'm excited about that.
All right, Councilmember Cooper.
Thank you, Mayor Selby. What a beautiful strategic plan. It makes sense. It's beautiful. Like, it looks really good. And it's kind of common sense. Like, these are the things we've been talking about as a community, and some people came together and wrote them down because they're really important and put the right slant on them, right? From the work that they do and the art that they create. I love that. I appreciate it. A couple of questions. Mike, can you just talk a little bit from your perspective as to how this plan aligns with our current work and activities in downtown?
Well, I think it's very consistent. I think it's building off of it. The thing that we have been primarily focusing on downtown is really dialing up the lovability and the livability of downtown. We need downtown to be a destination that is both thriving economically, but it is the place in the region that draws talent in. I know you have all heard me say this before. Economic development has changed. It is no longer about chasing and recruiting the big, large company to come in here and then jobs will follow. It's the inverse now. You have to attract and retain the great talent, and investment will follow where people want to live. And what you see in the strategic plan that's laid out in front of you is an investment in making this creative district a place that people will want to be. It'll make artists and creatives feel supported. They'll want to be in that place, and that helps create that ecosystem that can continue to grow and be that heartbeat that we want our downtown to be. So they are very, very consistent. I look at, we've got this overarching strategy for our downtown. The creative district is a tool in that strategy deployment. It's a very important tool, I think, too. One of the things that we always hear is that it is our artists and our creatives that make Olympia a unique destination, and they're in a unique, special place. And there's always concern that we could lose sight of that. We could lose that special component. I think that if you continue to have the artists and the creatives centered at the work of this, you've maintained their investment in keeping it authentic and genuine and real, and having those people supported in its role. So I look at them hand in hand. I will also say, as a part of the packet too, and if anybody wants a copy of it, we do have a printout of where your creative and innovation thrive creative district handout. It also has a map of the creative district, and all of the things over the last couple of years that we have accomplished in the district. So we weren't waiting for a strategic plan to be done to start doing things. We've been doing things. The strategic plan gives us the roadmap for the future. So
thank you. I really appreciate that answer. And I think actually I met with Todd, the executive director of the Downtown Alliance, last week. And, my hope into the future is if there's any single opportunity to improve downtown, as we talk about an improvement district, it's to fund and implement the creative district strategic plan. I think that the DID is a great idea and I will support it as it comes, but I also think that promoting downtown and promoting the creativity in downtown will go far and away above investing in cleaning. But that said, I just hope that that's a future partnership that happens. And then, Mike, is there any dedicated funding sources that come with this designation from the state?
I wish, but unfortunately, no. It does improve, again, having the designation does improve certain chances on grants as they may become available. It gets some awareness in the Washington State Arts Commission. There was some original sort of seed funding that was provided to be able to do some small project, but there is no annual guaranteed amount that comes with it at this point.
We've got a sign on the freeway.
We have a sign.
Right. Well, and a great opportunity to talk to the legislature about how to do this and do it right and create a funding source within the State Arts Commission, I would say, competitive process for the best creative districts around, right?
Yep.
Yeah, cool. And then I also think this is a really good opportunity for a policy conversation for us as a council. I cannot imagine making something this important compete competitively for Inspire Olympia. It's within our power to put some formula into that funding source, and I believe it should come off the top. Thank you very much.
Off the top of Inspire Olympia, or off the top of general fund? Okay, there's a conversation to be had there.
Keep asking.
Oh, okay. I've got some comments. All right, so I just really, again, gratitude. Every time this chamber is full of people from the creative community, it's just so much more positive. You just feel like anything's possible. So thank you so much for being here tonight and all the work that went into getting you here. I am also wanting to note that this does overlay definitely the character district, the artisan tech character district is kind of what pushed us up to the front with the creative district designation. It was all that work around the downtown strategy. So it's like it's baked into our comp plan. At the time we did those character districts, we didn't have the armory. So I want to find out how we can redraw that map, put a little thumb over there and include the armory. It just makes perfect sense, especially around the space needs that we have called out here in the strategic plan. I also want to, where'd my other notes go? Oh, I lost my page. Darn it. I had notes on two pieces of paper. I'll go back to talking about housing for creatives. So part of why I'm sitting in this chair was because of Olympia Art Space Alliance 12 years ago now. And, so here we are really still talking about trying to find affordable housing for our creative community. And so I'm really, really excited that this council is now where we are with, some of the tools that we have that we didn't back then to build affordable housing. Hopefully that will happen as well. And I had two other great things to talk about. I guess it was the, having it administered by a nonprofit, like I mentioned earlier, does provide a gateway into more grant funding that's available to them versus cities. We know that. We can always be co-signers on grants as, supporting entities, but I think it makes great sense to go with a nonprofit administration with some help. And, as Inspire Olympia, the grant program rolls out, we can figure out what the needs are and then go from there. I think we need to go through at least a full cycle of the grant program as the advisory committee is planning it before we start doing call outs. That's just my personal opinion because we need their input too. And that's all I have. So this was a briefing. We don't need any approval, but you're definitely on our minds for budgeting. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Picture with all these people?
Since you're kind of sunsetting a little bit, are we sunsetting as a committee? We want to do a picture? Come on. We want to do a picture. We want to be with the cool kids.
That's right. Because we want to
Yeah, where will this photo be used?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's an arts audience.
Don't say your own.
Wait, let me get front of
Who else wants to give their poem?
Wait for all of them stop.
I'm so bummed. What do I do with my other notes? I was like scribbling. Oh, well. All right, we have one more business item, and it's our city manager. So it's important. When he gets up there, we know it's important.
You ready for me?
I am ready. So we're on to item 6C, which is approval of fund balance above policy. So our city manager, Jay Burney, has some recommendations for the council. So take it away.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council. Again, Jay Burney, city manager. I don't bring the same fanfare that your other topics have brought tonight.
Hey.
But nonetheless, a very important item in front of you tonight as we discuss some critical needs for the city and how we might fund them using some of our fund balance above policy. So I am here tonight to have that discussion with you. And just as we talk about fund balance over policy, this used to be what we called our year-end discussion. We used to have a year-end discussion. And one of the things that I really appreciate about Aaron B. Miller as our new finance director, as he's come on board and we talk about terminology, is this is really about funding that we have available within our fund balance. Once we take care of and we account for all of our and fully fund all of our reserves. So once we do all of that, we have some money available in fund balance. Year over year, as you all know, that amount can fluctuate from year to year. It does, in part, is based upon what happens in the prior year, and sometimes the departments spend less. Sometimes we get new revenues that we weren't expecting, and all of that feeds into this discussion that makes up what ultimately becomes our fund balance. The majority of the recommendations that I'm going to share with you tonight were shared with the Finance Committee at their March meeting, and they expressed support for just about everything you're going to see here at that meeting. I had intended to go back, return to the Finance Committee in their May meeting to get a final recommendation from them, but due to some unforeseen circumstances, we had to cancel that Finance Committee meeting. So when I talked to Chair Parsley and the other committee members, they felt it was important to keep moving this forward. And so I'm here tonight. They asked me to just bring it directly to the full council. So that is why it does not have a Finance Committee recommendation with it, but I'm sure they will speak to it if needed. So I'm going to jump right into the list of what's here. Your available fund balance above policy right now is a little over $6.6 million, $6,641,000 and $6,641,750. My recommendations for you for one-time funding are here. The first on the list is $1.3 million to help fund gaps in our homeless response program. We have done an amazing job over the years. In fact, I'm going to say Darian and Rich Hoy and that team have done an amazing job over the years to continue to find ways to fund gaps. These are things that not just the garbage pickups and help support of our encampments, but we have contracts for Plum Street Village. We have contracts for Quinn Street Village. We have new housing support programs coming online. So we still have some gaps, and this helps us with that. this first $1.3 million that's there to help fund some of those gaps. I will say, I'll just give you a sneak peek, that Darien is working with Commerce on one other way to close a gap around Plum Street Village. And if we're able to do that and get some funding for Plum Street Village offset by some dollars from Commerce, that is going to almost completely close a lot of our gaps we have within our housing homeless program. So that's some good news on the horizon. So I hope to be here next year at this time with not this big of a number in front of you to look at. Building repair and replacement, this is something that's been on our list every year as off the top. One of the changes that we've shared with you is that we are changing what we charge out to departments in terms of the indirects to better account for building repair and replacement. I'd like to take this one off your list as a year-over-year item for you to consider and make this more part of our regular budget structure. So Aaron and I are working on that. We did first phase of that as part of last year's budget. We hope to implement the rest of that in this year's budget. So that is something we're working towards. This next one is new since I was at the Finance Committee. As council knows, early in the year, we closed the jail. And that leaves the other half of that building over on former Plum Street site is the jail, is the court and court staff and prosecution staff, and also all of our community court providers. And as you've been shared with you in years past, there just isn't enough space over there for particularly all of our community court providers. There's just not the space they need. So what I'd like to do is start working with Judge Alf and working with Mark Barber and his team and our community court providers and Diane Whaley to start looking at other space options for the rest of the individuals that are housed in that building. I don't have a proposal in front of you other than I think what this really looks like is probably a leased space for now that might make better use of what they need. And that would free up this building completely for us to consider other alternatives at that site. So I've got some money here, about $500,000. My guess is that will help us do some more consultant work around this, and potentially if we find a site, then maybe some tenant improvements and things like that. So this is a placeholder for now, but that's what that is for. We are in a process right now of evaluating our workers' comp provider. So I think council's aware that we are self-insured through a third-party administrator for all of our workers' comp claims. We've been talking to the Finance Committee as far back as last year, and we're going to talk more as part of the 2024 budget process about moving formally over to L&I and moving away from being a third-party provider. I've got some more discussion I need to have with all of you about what that looks like, what that means, and we'll do that later. But just in case that's where we want to go, we're going to need some money to make sure we shore up that fund as part of any transition to L&I. So again, more conversation on this piece. So right now, this is a placeholder of some dollars so we can let that conversation happen, and I can bring you a recommendation around how we want to move forward there. A lot of conversation as part of your budget process last year around sidewalks. So this proposal sets $300,000 aside for sidewalk discussions, and there's two discussions ongoing right now between the Finance Committee and Land Use around both maintenance and long-term funding. There are a few proposals kind of taking shape that we're going to have with the council as we move into the 2024 budget process. I've been engaged with our transportation team around this, and they certainly have some thoughts that are crystallizing over those discussions with those two committees with a recommendation to do some initial work. And so we have some seed money there for that. As you know, we've changed the way we do our development fee fund. That's a newer change over the last couple of years. We pre-fund it versus funding it at the end. Or at the end of last year, they underspent. And so what we want to do is rather than return that back, we want to take advantage of an opportunity to create a reserve fund within that CP&D fund. And this allows us to do that with with some seed money of $250,000. We have a regional records management system, which we are part of, our police department is part of. That records management system is due for an upgrade. All of the partners share in the cost of that upgrade. It's Olympia's share is $500,000. Council set aside half that money last year as part of this discussion, and this completes our funding need for the records management system. And as that process moves forward further, I know that Chief Allen will be spending time probably with CLIPS and with council about what that looks like and more about that upgrade moving forward. As I talked to Diane Whaley our defense case counts are up, our public defense case counts are up. Her budget is running perilously short, so Rich Hoy came to me and said we need to shore up some funding for our public defenders. And so there's $158,000, which gets them through this year and gives us some time to reevaluate our case counts as part of looking at our 2024 budget. So this closes the gap for this year. This is another one. I'm calling it one time right now, this asset management for Olympia Fire Department, which is really their bunker gear and other things like that they need. This is another one that over time I'd like not to have on this list. This is something that we need to fund on a year-over-year basis ongoing. This is really not the best way to do this. I know you know that. We've had a lot of conversation around that, and we've got more work to do to shore up funding within our public safety, not just in fire, but in police as well. We've got to cover our costs for the RFA election we just had. On council's work plan is a scoping study for wayfinding signage. This gives us the dollars to bring a consultant on board. Kelly is anxiously ready to start that work once she has this money. We've talked for a long time about the impact on our legal team with all of the work as our organization has grown and the lines of business that we support grow. Our legal team's needs have grown. This is a stopgap this year for outside legal services. We are going to have a much more robust conversation as part of the 2024 budget about the needs of our legal department. And I likely will be bringing you some recommendations to add more resources there over the long haul. It's that time to do a salary survey for our non-represented employees. As council knows, all of our union employees, they get a salary survey every time a new contract is due. So every 2 or 3 years, we go out and we look at comparables and we align that and we bring you a recommendation on a contract that keeps their salaries in pace. We need to do the same thing with our non-represented employees every few years. We need to do a salary survey to make sure that we're competitive so that we keep our employees here and we make sure that we value them in a way that pays them for the work that they do appropriately. So we need to bring a consultant on board to start that work. And again, that will feed into some future budget conversations. This is another new one that's new to the list since I went to Finance Committee, and that is some dollars for the Dispute Resolution Center. They had some dollars, some state funding that did some pilot work for some landlord-tenant rent dispute mediation, and that money went away. So in talking with them, this fits really well with the landlord-tenant work we're doing, and they're asking if we can support them for some additional pilot money to continue that program. I did have a conversation that with the director that we could probably do this on a one-time basis, but this is going to be really difficult to do to support over the long haul. But I think this buys some more time for some more conversation with them about how we can stand this up and make this successful over the long term. So again, this just is some money to keep that moving. All of you at one point in time have talked with me about the need to bring a federal lobbyist on board. I have started meeting with federal lobbyist teams to vet some groups. I'd like to work with you to bring someone on board by the fall so they can start their work. This, again, is a one-time money to get someone here in the fall, and we're going to need some on-time money as we look forward to 2024. Chief Allen has talked to you in the past and has been talking to, I think, Eclipse and everyone else about the need to do an updated staffing study within the police department. So we've got some one-time money that allows him to bring a consultant on board to help him do that work within the police department, and then we can bring those results forward. So all of those one-time items that are on that list total up to just under $4.4 million, which leaves you a balance of fund over policy of just short of $2.3 million. And my recommendation for you right now with that is, and you have a couple. One is you can leave it in fund balance, and that's an option. But as you know, part of standing up BLS Cares, BLS Transport, and OFD Cares is taking a bit of a loan from our budget stabilization reserve, about $4.5 million to do that, which can then be paid back over time by revenues that come out of the transport. My recommendation for you right now is to use this fund balance to buy down that $4.5 million by 2.3 and not utilize as much of your budget stabilization reserve to fund that. It also takes a little bit of pressure off of the transport to pay back on a faster pace in terms of getting our reserves paid back. And the other thing it gives you is a lot of flexibility because we are looking at what the impacts of 2023 into 2024 in terms of, are we going to see any type of recession? It keeps our reserves more intact for that and gives us some flexibility there for that as well. So that's my recommendation for that balance. But again, there's some flexibility there that we can talk about if you'd like. That is my recommendation. I might pause and see if the finance chair wants to add anything, or members of the finance committee before questions.
Thank you, Jay. Those asterisk items are not a surprise, and I think they're, one, personally very good. The homelessness response, my only question to you is that when you were first talking about this, was this going to be like a reserve, or is this actually money that you're going to be having to spend?
When I first was talking about this in the last few years, we thought it was going to be money that was more in reserve to help us towards things like support for encampments. As funding worked through Regional Housing Council and other agreements that we made to get other projects off the ground, we thought we had some money set aside as part of the county's ARPA dollars that was going to support Quinn Street Village for one more year. We have learned that money is not available to us. So I now need this money set aside so we have a placeholder as we head into 2024 to support the ongoing operations of Quinn Street Village. What gives me some hope is the conversations that Darian is having with Commerce right now about their ability to support these. It looks like we have a good option to get some support in a different way for Plum Street Village, which then frees that money up to be used here. So things could change on this one over the next 6 months. By the time I come to you with a final recommendation for the 2024 budget, this could shift around a little bit, and this might change. That number could change.
Thank you for that clarification. I would be strongly recommending, if we can, to put some of this way in a quote, quote, reserve. Now, tomorrow night at Finance, we will be hearing from our investment advisors, and they've always given us excellent economy kind of temperature. And I would say that I am for the BLS Care startup, but I would kind of hesitate putting it all in there until we hear this report about how real a recession is. And it's sort of, if we take it out of the budget stabilization and we go into reserve, it's a 6 one way and half a dozen other. We've just taken 4-point-something million out of the budget stabilization. We go into reserve. Whereas if we only take out 2.1, if I do my math, that's less and more flexibility for the budget stabilization. But I would say let the Finance Committee hear from our investment advisors and before we put the whole thing in. And lastly, the work we did with RFA and other groups that have done this type of BLS and OFD cares, some of the predictions that were given to us that we would be almost 100% recovery on transport will probably not be there. So we'll need to have ongoing conversations about how we fund this adequately. Those are my comments. In other words, yes, thumbs up, and thank you.
All right, I've got Councilmember Madrone, followed by Councilmember Nguyen.
I agree with Councilmember Parsley and at least holding that last bit around BLS and OFD cares until we have the rest of that information. I also want to thank you for including the Dispute Resolution Center one. That will be a gap once that pilot program that the state did is no longer in place. And we're kind of starting our own pilot project with the DRC on this. And if it's successful, it is something that I would like to see us continue funding over time. It's a really important service to be able to help landlords and tenants in disputes. In previous conversations that we've had on the Land Use Committee, the idea of having an ombudsman at the city has come up, and we've kind of said, well, the city's maybe not the best one to help navigate those disputes, and other cities have worked with their DRCs to do this. So if it's successful, and if people utilize it, I would like to see us figure out how to continue funding that, maybe through the rental housing registry stuff that we're talking about. But I just wanted to say that, one-time funds for now, but I'm hoping for a good outcome and that we keep that going.
And I talked to Jody about that, about getting some metrics so that as she gets to the end of it, she can share that with us, how it was utilized. So we'll have that information. It'll help you with that.
Great. Councilmember Nguyen, followed by Councilmember Cooper.
Hey, Jay. Thanks for thinking about ways to streamline this process. And then I also like it because then we all have more eyes on it. I am thinking about that great exercise we did on Saturday in our council mid-year retreat, where we split up into 2 different groups, and we came up with these, giant Post-its full of all of these things that we thought were important. And I know there hasn't been much time since then with the holiday weekend, but could we take those and measure it against this and see where possibly where there could be one-time funds that are covered that address some of those priorities that we brought up, and then maybe opportunities. Some that came up in my group just immediately that I'm thinking of, especially with the sort of this looming threat of a recession next year is that hunger, and then looking into childcare. So I'm not sure what that could look like, and that would be more conversation with the council, but I'd really like to do that. And I would suppose that we have those notes somewhere.
We do. So I will get a complete package of notes back from Meg Winch and her team around all of that. And then we're also going to take some time as a staff to package that up and sort it out for you. It will all come back to council. As you know, that discussion was helpful for all of us, I think, to get us directed, especially towards the 2024 budget and where some of those priorities might line up. I think the conversation tonight around this $2.3 million that you have some flexibility with, I think gives you some other opportunities as we look at that list that you could dip in there too, if you needed to. So I think that's another opportunity. So once I get those notes, it will be good. It would be really helpful for me tonight to be able to move some direction on this. Some of the money that's sitting here, the staff is waiting for it to actually do the work. So my one suggestion might be is to take an action that allocates the 4.368, but holds the rest of the money in fund balance until you have some more time for some more conversation. That might be a good way to get at this evening, if that works for all of you. And that gives you some more time.
I think that's something we can consider here in a moment. I've got Councilmember Cooper, followed by Councilmember Payne.
Thank you, Mayor Selby. Thanks, Jay. I appreciate the add-on since finance, and want to echo Councilmember Madrone around the DRC. I had the opportunity to work with 2 different dispute resolution centers outside of our county in my day job, and it was sort of unbelievable that program wasn't continued. It was immediately not funded enough for the demand in every community in Washington State. And so I appreciate you and Jody figuring out a way to keep something going in our community. Also, and maybe this is obvious, but I just want to make sure that when we do our salary study that we're also looking at benefits and looking at kind of what other cutting edge benefit ideas might be out there in this workforce environment.
Yep.
Okay. And then I'm actually really supportive of funding the leftover change into the BLS. We've been talking about it for a long time, and the opportunity to not have to pay ourselves back half of it is really, I think, a good opportunity in the moment. Though I wanted to ask the city manager one question about that. If we funded $2.273450 dollars into BLS and OFD cares and an OFD strategic plan and staffing study, could you do that also? Because I think that we need the funding for that as much as we need the BLS and OFD cares funding.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that question, because one of the things that we are going to need is, as you know, I'm in the process of recruiting for a new fire chief. In fact, I had my first set of meetings with employees today, and I have them all this week and all next week to try to, and we're all talking about the future of the fire department and what that looks like. And I think what's come clear to me is, as the new chief comes on board, one of the things they're going to really need to do is spend some time in the community and spend some time developing a new strategic plan, and to bring not just their employees together, but the community together around the future of our fire department, and what our funding needs are and what that all looks like. And that new chief is definitely going to need some money. So I think within that 2.273, if you're comfortable, once I bring a new chief on board, we can allocate it towards BLS and OFD cares, and then carve out a piece to help that chief do some strategic planning work. That's definitely something we can do there, and probably would be appreciated by me and the new chief. So thanks for that.
All right, Councilmember Payne.
Thank you, Jay. There's a couple things I wanted to speak to. One, thank you for the federal lobbyists. We desperately need that. And for those of you who are watching, that will be a benefit to us from the bipartisan infrastructure law that is passed. Specifically, it would be really helpful to have an understanding of the grant opportunities and things like that that will come out of the federal government in the coming years. And so having a lobbyist will really be helpful. The other piece is I appreciate your speed on the court space transition funding. I actually see that as a complement to our reimagining public safety work because the efficiency of our courts is important. And if they need a new space to do that work, then we should be able to do that. And then there's also the opportunity of quickly moving to figure out what else we can do with that space. You know, I know that we originally talked about some housing on the Armory property. I remember once upon a time in a study session, and we were like, that's just too much that we can like do in one space. So I don't know, just throwing that out there. But there's whatever we couldn't do with the Armory space, maybe that's some extra room there for that. So, but anyway, thank you. And I support this.
Thank you. I just point out to just make more of a point. We have, I think, 29 community court providers. And they can't all be on site at the same time. And there's just some work that you just can't do over Zoom to build relationships. And so getting a really good space for those providers is a much different way to get at restorative justice with those that need it. So thank you.
I've got some comments. Sorry. I haven't gone yet. I'm all anxious. Always last. My comment is kind of related to Councilmember Parsley's about the OFD and BLS allocation for startup costs. My understanding was when we decided to move forward as a council with that, it was going to be completely a loan, basically out of our reserves, that they would pay back over time with their ability to charge for their services. Yeah. So, and I love this program, but why would we basically forgive half that loan by using this money?
So I guess I would look at it not so much as a loan to the fire department, right? So we're using some one-time monies to start up a new program within the fire department. And absent any other funding source, we chose budget stabilization because it's available to us, but we can't not replace our reserves, right? So the expectation would be that over time they would pay back our reserves. The sooner that we relieve them of a responsibility to pay back any portion of those reserves, that excess money can go right back into the department and help us grow and obtain the other things that we need within the fire department. It becomes available to us for other purposes.
But it's our reserves, so it's not available to us.
So
I'm not following.
So once they pay back the reserves, right, then that excess that comes out of BLS transport is no longer allocated strictly to paying back the reserves. It's now available to the fire department for other purposes.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think we're both saying.
Yeah, we might be. I think.
Well, no, I mean, I think you're right, but my question is still there. It's like we're forgiving half the loan with carryover dollars. Maybe Councilmember Cooper can help me understand.
To me, what I think the disconnect between the two comments is by not having debt service as much debt service on the startup, the program will actually pencil faster and become closer to revenue neutral because we'll be able to use the revenue that comes in to fund the program and not fund the loan. So the smaller that loan is and the less debt service we have to pay out of the program up front, the more we'll be able to operate the program right away. We'll need general fund money for that.
Let me take a stab at what you're saying. So previously it was all going to come out of reserves. All of that was going to get paid back. And then everything after then would then go back to the fire department. Now we're taking half out of reserves, half out of year-end fund. And then once the reserves are paid back, then everything after that goes back to the fire department. And so we're pretty much putting 2.27 million, into the program that we won't see back, where we would have seen that back before if it was all paid for out of reserves. Is that it, Cheryl? Okay.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of different ways we can look at this. So here's maybe the other way to look at it too. So if you use this to lessen the obligation of the payback to your budget stabilization reserve, you have more money in your reserves that are available for other emergencies that might come up, right? So if let's say we allocated this $2.3 million entirely to something else, and then we took an entire $4.5 million out of your budget stabilization reserve, our risk as a city is now we have that $4.5 million of our reserves allocated over a longer period of time. It's a longer payback period. Our risk to the city is extended over a longer period of time.
But we knew that when we agreed to it. We didn't know we'd have this extra money.
Agreed. So I think what I'm saying is I'm just giving you an option to fund this differently. But you have, as I mentioned up front, you have total flexibility with this. If you'd like to leave this in fund balance, have the rest come out, have it fully come out of budget stabilization, that is an option at your disposal too.
And I think we could also have it the way that you've proposed it here, but not only is the stabilization fund paid back, but also this 2.27 million is paid back to the general fund. And then it's considered whole, right? That could happen as well.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of an accounting trick, but sure.
I see both sides of this, and I understand what Cheryl's asking, and I also, Danny, that's a good point. Excuse me, Councilmember Madron. I also strongly think we should wait for the forecast tomorrow night before we make this as part of the motion. I think we should put it as like a squiggle sign saying this is a good idea, and then some of the options like Councilmember Huen talked about from our retreat and the strategic plan. I love that for the fire department. So I guess I'm hoping you will repeat what you recommend for your motion, that it would be what you have put up here with some wiggle room on the 2.273, $450. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So what I'm gathering from this conversation tonight, there's still some questions here around how we might best allocate the 2.273. So what I might recommend for tonight is you make a recommendation around the 4.368, hold the rest, the other 2.273 in fund balance for now, so we can have some more conversation both at the finance committee and with the council about how to best do that. I think there are a lot of different options here for you, but with the questions that are coming tonight, I think it's best to do that, and so we can have more time for conversation. And it's not critical for that decision to be. It's not holding up BLS transport. It's not holding anything up for us to wait and spend more time on that.
Okay, so I've got Councilmember Nguyen followed by Mayor Pro Tem Gilman.
Thank you. I really appreciate you pointing that out, Mayor. So I know that you're basically, I'm hearing wrap up language from you, Jay, and we sort of almost have a plan here. Although I do want to just kind of close a loop on this in my mind, so I'm not questioning this while I'm leaving here. So in my experience with you, you don't casually suggest things to change for no reason. So can you please tell me, even though it seems like we're probably holding on the 2.2, could you please tell me why it would be a benefit? Because it seems like you think it would be a benefit to put it into the startup cost. So can you walk me through that, please?
Yeah, so our startup costs for BLS transport, a lot of them are one time. So when you have one, our financial strategy says use one-time money for one time. So since we didn't have $4.5 million available fund balance, at least that time we had that conversation, we said, hey, let's use our reserves, our budget stabilization reserve. Our budget stabilization reserve, we're in a really good place with that because not a lot of cities have that, right? We've worked hard to have a budget stabilization reserve that gives us extra protection against uncertainty within the economy. And that's what it was intended to be there for. But when I noticed that we had a lot more fund balance over that reserve, in my mind as a city manager, I want to always allocate the flexible one-time money to the one-time cost first and not commingle it so much, that's probably a bad word, within our reserves. It just creates a separation from the impact on our reserves. And so in my world as a city manager, I always want to take that more flexible money and use it towards the one-time costs and preserve our reserves as much as possible. But as you pointed out, it is kind of 6 to 1, half a dozen of the other. Because even if you said, well, let's allocate that 2.2 there, it gives us more reserves, so we're still protected against the economic uncertainty. So it really is kind of a color of money. So again, I think you have some other options, but that's my distinction, and how I got there is, rather than use reserve money, use the money we have above our fund balance first before we dip into reserves. I hope that helps.
Yeah, and just a quick clarification. Either way, this doesn't affect BLS or OFD cares. Is that correct?
It does not.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. I've got Mayor Pro Tem Gilman, followed by Councilmember Cooper. We love this topic.
So as I'm listening and trying to understand the concern about, which fund we use. First, I don't think of the fire department as an enterprise fund, as a separate standalone, nor would I think of this new transport and OFD cares as being something separate from the city. It's a we rather than a they. So I wanted to express that understanding. And then I frankly agreed with Jay as he explained, in the previous weeks, this idea about one-time startup costs with year-end money that we have, or what do we call fund balance money that we have. But I'm also okay if finance decides that you would prefer that we use reserves and that we allocate this one-time money for other one-time needs. That's okay with me. And I just want to express that I'm also, for both morale and efficiency reasons, very, very anxious to stand up these programs. So I wouldn't want the decision to delay getting the ball rolling on the program.
Yeah, you won't.
Agreed. Councilmember Cooper.
Thank you, Mayor Sylvia. I just had one distinction I wanted to clarify with the city manager. If we borrow from our reserves, do we have to pay ourselves interest?
In this case, there wouldn't be a requirement to do that. You could choose to do that. I probably wouldn't recommend it because it's coming from one of your departments, so I probably wouldn't recommend it.
So because it's not an enterprise,
that's right.
It's okay. So then that does make it a wash in the end, as long as we don't delay any implementation.
That's right. And as it's pointed out, it doesn't delay any implementation. And again, I think it's perfectly fine to make a recommendation around the 4.3 and then hold the rest for more conversation.
Okay, Councilmember Madrone.
And I just wanted to respond a bit to Mayor Pro Tem. Like, I'm not looking at this like, oh, the fire department's going to owe us money or anything. And when we approve these programs, there was an understanding that there'd be a fee for service that would pay it back. So I think we're all just trying to get on the same page here to make sure that what we initially agreed to is what is still going to come about. And if that's going to change because numbers have shifted or what the things that we've learned new things since then we all just need to understand that and be on the same page.
Yeah.
Okay, Councilmember Parsley.
Are we ready for a motion?
Please.
Okay. Let's see if I get this right. Jay, you can nod if I'm getting this. I move to approve the fund balance above policy recommendation as stated for the $4.368 $300 million or whatever, that number, and leave undetermined or undecided $2.273 and $450 with the city manager potentially coming back to council on the distribution of that money in the near future.
That works.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes. Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. All right, so it's time for council reports. For my mayor's report, we talked quite a bit about it already, but I just do want to give it one more recognition. The Juneteenth celebration on Sunday at Rebecca Howard Park was, again, just growing each year, and even with the inclement weather, it was well attended, and definitely the spirits were high. So I just want to commend again our Parks Department, specifically Olivia Salazar-Dubrow and Paul Simmons, who worked very, very hard all day, making sure that event went off smoothly, and then as well I just blanked. Shauna Hawk and Women in Color in Leadership, that organization who took leadership definitely in making that event a reality. So thank you very much. All right, I go to Councilmember Madrone.
A couple things to report. The Regional Housing Council met. I previously told you that we had a gap in our funding for homeless services due to less home sales, less collection of REIT. But that gap was filled by the Emergency Housing Fund from the legislature. So we recently made a recommendation to the County Commission, and they have approved that for $13 million of funding for homeless services and affordable housing. So yay that went through. At the Transportation Policy Board, there is some new funding for the carbon reduction program through the federal government. That is not a whole lot of funding to split amongst a bunch of jurisdictions. There's a little over $1 million that we allocated, and federal money is really tough to spend. So we did have some conversation about could we fund some sidewalks with it? Could we do this? And it's actually just really difficult to do small projects with federal money. We did end up just allocating that funding among the jurisdictions into existing projects to pay for sidewalks and stuff like that. But just to attach them to projects that are already using federal dollars, already having to, all the red tape, et cetera. And then I also want to report on World Oceans Day that happened on June 10th. There was a really lovely celebration at Heritage Park. We heard from Chair Peters of the Squaxin Island Tribe and Representative Dolio and County Commissioner Ty Menser. And one of the things that really stuck with me that Chris Peters spoke to was the need for those of us living in this community today, living on Earth today, to think really strongly about lifestyle changes in the interest of future generations. It is incredibly important that we change how we do things now so that future generations can enjoy life on this planet. And I'll just leave it with that.
Right. Thank you, Councilmember Payne.
Thank you, Mayor. A couple items. So I waived my report last meeting, so I just wanted to say that last month's meeting for the Law and Justice Council, remember, we're meeting every other month now. We had an extensive presentation on advancing pretrial policy and research, also APPR. The main takeaway from that I appreciated is that the county is looking at data tracking for monitoring criminal behavior during the pretrial phase. So essentially what that would help with is it would help with intervention purposes and offering resources. So this is a way of sort of interjecting and getting in the way before there's any criminal behavior. And this is an approach that I really appreciate. And I think it's consistent with our work that we're doing with reimagining here at the city level. I totally forgot about World Oceans Day, that we attended that. And I actually want to take this time to echo something that I think is really important from the community to hear on that. There was a question asked of Representative Dolio when she was speaking about the airport proposal. And she shared at this event that Thurston County will not be getting an airport, and that is done. And that part of the reason for that is because it is national security concerns because of our proximity to JBLM. And so I just wanted to state that, and hopefully it will reach the far ends of the county. And also, I just want to speak to the quarterly meetings that City Manager Bernie and I have been attending with Thurston Thrives, with the Elected Officials Council. And really, we're getting a lot of information in regards to the fentanyl opioid crisis in our county, and it is the leading cause of death in our county. And we're finding out some really, really critical and important information through these meetings, as well as the nuances or the details around the opioid task force or this abatement council that's required for the region to convene. And so it's really, really just interesting to be in the room with folks from all over the community who are bringing their different perspectives on how to tackle this. I personally come from a place of we need to move with urgency as a region on this. And so I'm really hoping that we can get this abatement council up and going, because literally every minute is another person's life. And so I know what it sounds like when we talk about having another council. It's like, oh, it's just going to be a bunch of people talking, and we don't have time for that. And frankly, we don't. And so, but I'm really looking forward to seeing what could come of this and what solutions we end up coming up with as a region to respond to this crisis. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem.
I just want to put out an idea. I was moved by the public comment this evening, and it made me reflect that it's at least since before the beginning of the pandemic, since we've had kind of a census and a report of encampments in the city. We haven't talked about Percival Canyon, Grass Lake. We haven't really quantified what's happening in the jungle for a few years. And I think given what feels to me like really increased public interest, both in the media and in the letters we're receiving, that having a sense of what kinds of public safety responses we're having, what kinds of census our social workers are counting there, just having some idea of the scope and scale of the unhoused communities around Olympia would help my understanding and my ability to respond to those comments.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And just point of privilege, I'll add that with the coming months where we will be starting to be able to move people out of the encampments along the I-5 corridor into housing, those folks that choose not to participate in those programs, where are they going to be going? And so if we can figure out what we have right now, we can tell if those areas are growing as well. So good point. Thank you. Sure, Councilmember Cooper.
Thank you, Mayor Selby. I was going to add, because I think it came up on Saturday. I can't remember if it was you or someone else that was asking, as we bring these new units online, where is the balancing point between us having to offer and to be offer space for people to be in compliance with federal law versus being able to feel comfortable that we have enough space to offer and it's time to move on because you're causing problems.
Right. Councilmember Parsley.
I have two things to report. And the wonderful thing about having an electronic notebook is you can do it and it translates it into Word. The bad thing is when the power runs out in the middle of a meeting, you have to rely on your memory. So the Finance Committee did a special meeting on May 31st, and we covered two main things: the Southeast Urban Growth Area annexation. And there's a couple points that I just want to highlight. And also, before I do that, this discussion is not over. It's part of a larger budget discussion that the city manager is working on. The first larger 60,000 foot level impression we have is the financial impacts of annexing Southeast Olympia is no different than what we're seeing in the rest of the city. Some of these impacts to fire, to public works, to other aspects, parks, is no different. And we will have an impact, and it will be an increase strain onto our general fund. But as we said, this is really not, this is a microcosm from what's happening entirely for our budget. There is two things to consider. We're going to come back to this. That's why I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. First is when you annex at a certain point before the growth happens, you can take advantage of some of the impact fees, which is growth paying for growth. If we wait until this area is completely maxed out on its density, we will have lost the ability and the benefit of taking advantage of the impact fees. The second thing is currently right now, House Bill 1425 allows us to do a sales and use tax for the ILA method of annexation, which would limit the impact on our general fund for 10 years. So there's some benefits for doing it earlier, but I think this is part of a larger budget conversation. The other thing that we talked about was the Ole Strong update. We've heard some of this throughout the year. I'm just going to highlight my mind, what we're hearing from our community. The biggest thing we can do for resiliency is affordable housing and jobs. And that is not only for supporting the micro and small businesses because they're looking for employees. So this is sort of where the Ole Strong is going. Did I manage to remember everything, Finance Committee? Yeah. The Southeast annexation conversation is not done. Let's just put it that way. It was the first look. The second thing I have for report is we had a lot meeting last week on June 14th. It was one of the most fun I've had in Lot, and you guys know how much I love Lot. The day started off with us getting a tour of the biologic process because it's officially open. And we have dignitaries from all over Washington and other water treatment plants to come see how great it is. And I got to wear 3D goggles to actually walk around the inside of the tanks because that's how they do designing now. And they allow the staff to get trained before the building is even complete because they can go in and flip levers and say, hey, this space isn't going to be big enough for me to work. Let me move these blowers 2 feet farther apart. Then we had our work session at 5:30 that night. We got an update on the perspective of PFAS. And if you'll remember, PFAS is one of the 2 compounds found in the reclaimed water study having any impact on being able to infiltrate, but it would take 100 years to have an impact. PFAS is one of the growing concerns across the country. The EPA has taken it on. Some states have outright outlawed it. What is PFAS? It's a compound. There's about 50 different versions of this compound found in things like Teflon pans, some of the firefighting gear, some of the firefighting foams. It's found in cosmetics. It's found pretty much anywhere. And it is related to heart disease, high pressure, cancer, and a few other things. So it is going to potentially be a problem not only for our water treatment plant, but for a lot of other aspects of the city and infrastructures. But it could become an issue requiring that we actually do advanced cleanup of our reclaimed water, whether it's going into bud inlet or infiltration, as well as our biosolids, and be able to pull that out with advanced techniques like carbon filtration. Then they went on and let us know that the EPA has taken notice of our advanced biologic processing, and we were a Class 3 water treatment plant. We are now one of the first in the state of Washington to be a Class 5, which is the highest level of water treatment available. But we're not done. They also gave us an update on we all approved, by the way, Danny. I did it again. Councilmember Madrone, I am so sorry. The lot board unanimously approved the sea level rise response spending. So we're going to go ahead and do that, the collaborative joint funding, project funding that they brought forward. Then we got an update on alternative procurement. And some of you all knew about this when I talked about the biologic process. Instead of taking the lowest bidder, it is a formulation where the lowest bid in combination with qualifications for the ability to do the project. And they did this with the biologic process, and the biologic process came in $1 million under what they expected and was done faster because they were able to select the company that actually had the expertise to build the biologic process. So they had less late minute bills because they picked the right one. They are going to do that with the digester project because it is a highly complex project, taking a floating lid digester that has volatile gases in it and is about almost 100 degrees, and turn it into a solid lid and capture methane. So that's pretty cool. I think the city, if where possible, can do the alternative. Now, lastly, last cool thing. I know Cheryl's shaking her head. We did a survey of solar. If you go over and look at the roofs of lot, we have probably 15 to 20,000 square feet of solar. And when we repair one of the buildings, we're going to be putting solar on the roof, and we're looking at a solar study for all the flat roof of lot. And yes, I'm done.
Thank you, Councilmember Parsley, for that robust reporting. All right. I know Councilmember
Says, very thorough. Very thorough.
Councilmember Huen.
Thank you. So I have a few. You had started off reports, Mayor, by talking about Juneteenth and thanking our city staff, namely Olivia Salazar-Debro. So I got to see something kind of similar happening. You'll remember that in May, in partnership with the South Puget Sound oh my goodness, Asian Pacific Islander Coalition and the city of Olympia, with Olivia also leading the charge. We had the our city's first Asian Pacific American Native Hawaiian Heritage Month celebration, and their sort of returns coming back to us. I got an invitation along with Olivia and Natalie Copelands from the city to a celebration at the Julinho Temple. It's a Buddhist temple in East Olympia, and the celebration was Visek, or commonly known as Buddha's birthday. And so myself, Natalie, and I think Olivia was also able to make it, got to join in sort of on their turf, right? And it was, well, on a personal note, it was really lovely to see that many Vietnamese people gathered in one place in Olympia. Granted, I do believe it was the urban growth area. Though it was just really beautiful. You know, it's just nestled in a neighborhood, and there was a lot of ways that tradition was practiced that day. And then also, they were so excited to have a city representation there. And they did even note back to some issues that they were having with folks vandalizing and trying to break into the temple. So that was months and months ago. And through the Olympia Police Department, we were able to get someone to go out there. And I think it might have been Shelby Parker, to go out there and do a septet assessment. And they're just forever grateful for that. And so they let me know that they're still, following the suggestions. So it's just nice to see the event be successful, hosted at the Olympia Center with the Asian Pacific Heritage Month, but then also these ways that community is still happening. So I thought that was really neat. And then also through the city, I just want to say thank you so much to I'm sure Susan can hear me wherever she is. But then also city staff, and then council support of a part of being on city council is that we get to do a little bit of professional development ourselves. And then, sometimes that looks like attending conferences. And then sometimes it looks like, for me, being a part of leadership Thurston County this past year, or the past 10 months. So I, along with Ryan Hirataka from Olympia Police Department, along with Brooke Eisen, Community Planning and Development, along with Carrie McCausland from Communications, all got to walk a small stage and graduate. And from that, we've learned more about the community and definitely made more connections. So for that, I'm really grateful. And I get to be a part of cool alumni that Jim Cooper and Susan, there you are a part of. So that's really neat. And I feel really fortunate for that. And then lastly, a little kind of unusual, but I attended the League of Women Voters annual meeting, and one of the agenda items was their completion of a years and years long water study. And they would like to figure out how to get that before us. If it means coming and presenting to a committee, they're open to it. So I thought maybe the best way, I look at the chair of land use, is to maybe send that to you and see what you think of it. I don't know where it could land.
Yeah, sure. Send it to me. And if you send it to me before Thursday, I can ask the committee what they think.
Well, I better hurry up.
All right, thank you for that. And Councilmember Cooper.
Thank you, Mayor Selby. A few items. So with the wildfires in Canada and New York having the worst air quality of all time, well, of recorded history, there's been a lot of interest lately. And so wanted to just put out a good website, fire.airnow.gov, allows you to look at fire and smoke maps across the country in real time. It's actually pretty cool. It takes a minute to load, so give it time. And then also related to that, now in most smartphones within Google Maps or within the Apple Weather app, you can choose air quality as a layer and see that in real time as well. So as we move into the summer, it's a good way to monitor. Also a reminder for folks that we no longer have the Washington Air Quality Index and the federal one. We just have the federal one, so there won't be any confusion. And speaking of the Olympic Region Clean Air Agency, on Wednesday last week, we had a celebration to celebrate our 55th birthday, as well as paying off our building. And so the Clean Air Agency bought its building in 2002 for $800,000. We financed $655 at a rate of 4.848. In 2021, we refinanced that loan, the last little bit of it, at 0.703. And we are very lucky to have Thurston County as our banker and to hold the mortgage for us. The celebration was cool because we had some staff that had been 25 years ago, staff that had been part of the organization come and join us. And it was the first quorum of the ORCA board to be in person since February of 2020. So we had 5 of our 8 board members at the meeting in person, and it was just really nice to, as you know, come back together for a moment. I also wanted to a little bit of a personal shout out, but also to just express gratitude to the staff and the music teacher, especially at Pioneer Elementary, who coordinated a 4th and 5th grade audition to the Mariners for the national anthem. And on Sunday, the 4th and 5th grade from Pioneer sang the national anthem on Father's Day at the Mariners game, including my daughter, Maggie. So that's the reason that it's personal, but it was really cool to see Olympia represented down on the floor of let me get the name right, because I almost said the other company, T-Mobile Park. It was pretty cool. And then lastly, I just want to express a thanks to the mayor for bringing us the Poet Laureate program. Mm-hmm. That's really cool. And I don't think anyone had thought of it before you. So, well, in our city anyway. So thank you very much.
Thank you for that. Before I depart, I have a whole graphic that Stephanie Johnson's put together of all the programs that have happened over the last 10 years, which are pretty kind of fun to see. Kind of fun. All right, City Manager, your report.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I had one item, but in the Great Minds Think Alike category, Councilmember Nguyen recognized our Leadership Thurston County graduates, which I was going to do tonight. So thank you for doing that. So with that, I have nothing to report.
All right, with no more business before the Olympia City Council, we're adjourned.